right. I would like to call to order the Select Board meeting of March 11th, and I will quickly go over the agenda. But first, let me look to see who's here for the meeting. It looks like we have 4 members present, and one, David Modell, is not present. So I'll quickly go over the agenda. We have a public comment as our first, our community input. We'll then go to appointments and resignations, then the notice of the town caucus, zoning bylaw amendment, ADU for annual town meeting. Going to discuss that. Then the town audit exit conference. And note that Mr. Modell arrived right on time. Then we're going to have at 8:05 p.m. a joint meeting with the Finance Committee, and we're going to go through a number of questions that we had and the Finance Committee may have. And I think the MFC is going to join us and have a meeting and then as well. And then at 9:35, we're going to have the Town Administrator Bylaw Draft Review. Then at 9:45, the Town Administrator Report. And then warrants and minutes, liaison reports, and community input. So now we have a full quorum of 5 members, and we have a number of people online. Again, this is an opportunity for anyone. We're going to take community input. If you have questions or comments, you can direct them to me. You will have 1 minute. If I want additional, at my discretion, you can speak an additional minute, but please make your comments cogent, and you can talk about anything, any issues that we're facing or anything you want. So, seeing that, I'll open it up to public comment. Yes, please introduce yourself by your name and street.
Mark Bernstein, Peter Hans Road.
Yep.
I had a question on a comment. I was just wondering if the town has seen any effects of all the federal cutbacks, and whether any money's disappeared that we were counting on.
I will direct that to our town administrator to respond to that question, if you wouldn't mind.
You will respond?
I would. We don't have to respond, but I'd like you to.
So not yet. I don't think that would hit us immediately, as it would mostly come through the federal funding of state priorities, but that's being analyzed at every level. So if there is something, we'll know.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else online, perhaps, who has question, comment? All right. Any last minute? No? Seeing none, we're going to move on then. We will have community input at the end of our session, and for certain things, I may open up to public comment in various sections of the meeting tonight. Appointments and resignations.
So I would like to recognize that the board has been duly notified of the resignation of Billy Joe Kelly from the Youth Commission, and I would like to move to approve the amendment to the town meeting study committee charter as included in the packet. So we'll start with that one. And that was to, and maybe David wants to talk about it, that is to include Wayne Davis as a full voting member of the
Correct.
Committee.
Yes, correct.
Want to say anything else?
We had a quorum difficulty at one point, and because he's ex officio, even though he goes to every meeting, he wasn't counted. And he himself has said somewhere in his notes that he originally asked to be ex officio because he did not want to guide policy, or he had some reason why he didn't feel at that time it was appropriate to be a regular member. But now that we've essentially set our policy on town meeting and we're in the implementation phase, he no longer has an objection to being a full member, and it would ease our quorum issue because he always shows up.
Okay.
And we thank him for his service. It's been a big help.
So you're going to need a second.
What?
You're going to need a second on that.
Yeah, I need a second. Okay. Is there any further discussion, questions on this? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
Okay, so I move to appoint Wayne Davis as a voting member of the Town Meeting Study Committee, termed and in accordance with the committee's charter.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
All right, I move to appoint Janelle Capusta as a member of the Youth Commission, termed and June 30th, 2027.
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone have a comment on that? No? Okay, we saw it in the package. Okay. So a voice vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed.
Lastly, I move to appoint Jim Mastro Giovanni to the position of police officer for the police department.
Second.
Mr. Town Administrator?
Sure,
Tell us
the
about it.
employee in front of you for appointment, Jim, has a master's degree in counterterrorism, has several training certificates, having served as a police officer in Dudley, Massachusetts since 2018. Some people might recognize his name, as he did serve at one point here in Carlisle as a part-time officer, had other part-time officer positions, and interestingly has his FAA pilot's license, I believe, for drone flying.
Provided we fund a drone.
Well, he can
May
fly
not
it.
need
I'm not
to,
sure he'll
though,
have
if
one,
he's a,
but he can fly it.
Does he have his
Yeah.
own drone?
So Jim comes with a ton of experience, and we'd be hiring him starting at step 4, and would be a candidate for professional development, hopefully eventually leadership in our department.
Any further questions? I noticed he was beer certified. Did you see that?
Yeah, I skipped over that because it doesn't sound great.
You're certified?
what does that represent?
BEER certified, and
I know how to
looked
spell
at.
beer. What is it?
No,
That's a certification.
It's a evidence, it's, he's.
Breaking and entering
Breaking and entering
evidence
evidence recovery or something.
That's the acronym they came up with?
Beer, yeah.
They need some PR help, those guys, man.
Well, it caught my
I think-
attention.
Yeah,
I
it's
thought
easy
beer
to remember.
certified.
Yeah.
It's easy to remember. I'm beer. I know a lot of people who are beer certified, actually. I
I'm
wouldn't
wine
even trust them with
certified.
any evidence whatsoever.
Right, all right, so we've had a second voice vote. All in favor? Aye. None opposed. Welcome to the force.
You'll see him
Hello,
again.
Penny.
We'll have a pinning ceremony
Yeah.
in the next couple meetings.
Great. All right, so that ends our appointments and resignations. We can get started with the notice of the town
I
caucus.
see that Ashley's on.
Oh, good.
Shall we make the motion first, or you want to let Ashley talk about it?
Why don't we have Ashley talk about it? Ashley, are you online at the moment? If you want, you can
Yes, I am.
chime
Hi.
in. Great to hear from you. If you want to tell us a little bit about this.
So it's pretty standard business. It's just the call of the caucus, which sets the time, place, and the open offices for the annual town election.
The town caucus or the town?
So the
One-
town caucus basically sets the offices that will be open for the annual town election.
Oh, I see.
And at the caucus, we'll make nominations for these positions.
Got it. So it's doing both, kind of, huh?
Yeah, it's setting a time, place, location, and kind of saying, you know, these are the open offices getting ready for the town election.
Okay.
All right, so we need a motion on that.
I move the select board vote to accept and sign the notice of town caucus as presented in the packet.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on it?
Yeah. Who are the two, I know one of the two. Who is the other select board person? Up?
I'm the 1 year.
I'm up.
You are? You're
I'm up and Barney's up, and then she has the 1 year.
So 3. It says
Well,
2.
there's a 1 year, which is the
Oh, okay,
remainder
I
of
see.
Kate's term, and then
I
there are
see.
2 3-year terms.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right, very good, thank you.
All right. Anything further, Ashley? Is that it?
Did we vote?
No, that covers it.
Okay,
yeah.
great.
We have to vote.
All right, so we have to vote. There was a, you seconded? Okay, so all in favor?
Aye.
None opposed. Okay,
Mr. Chair,
yes, Mr.
so we
Amadio.
skipped something, I had a question. In the Wayne Davis appointment was also amending the charter, but we didn't,
That's the first thing we did.
That was
We
the
amended
first
the
vote.
charter.
we did
and
amend
then-
it? Oh.
Yes, and then we installed him as
So
a,
then I have a related question, which I was gonna ask Gretchen, but I didn't. Because the rest of us, our term was to end on a date, which would be June 30, or was it to end with the charter?
What did it do? It's probably based on the charter, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it was set up as a short-term thing,
Okay, so
right?
it
But,
wasn't, Gretchen had, maybe Ryan recalls, Gretchen thought it easier, maybe we thought it easier to
All right,
simply
let's see.
extend the charter by a few months.
Right, which is in here, which is what we
Yeah.
approved, right? It was
Yeah.
already written in that it would,
Term through June 30th, 2025, during its period of service, committees requested to deliver.
Okay,
Certain
so
things.
by doing this, I don't really read that it automatically extends everyone else's term.
no, it changed, I guess, the final report to not later than January
I know,
15th,
but-
2026. So you're right, your terms would be up the end of June.
I mean, yeah, is the term in a separate document? It's not usually in the charter, or what?
No, it's in the charter. Final report. Yeah, you would think that you would still want to be in
Well, I
No.
have to meet with them and.
meeting.
I'm gonna tell them, right, so,
Oh, yeah, in fact, actually, the report and the term were coincident,
Oh,
so,
term and timelines.
yeah.
Sorry.
where are you looking?
It's the bottom
I
of the
see.
first page.
Term through submission, okay.
Right.
It's kind of obliquely stated, I guess I have to say. It doesn't actually say that their terms are, all right, so I mean,
Could
you
be a little
feel,
clear.
I guess it's clear enough that I can tell them they got to serve for a
Yep.
few more months?
That you can't get out.
Well, they can always resign. Okay.
Is that long, let me ask you this, is that long enough? Is June 30th long enough, or did you want to go through October or so?
Well,
I mean, because we haven't had a chance to test any of these things.
right, so we agree, let's say what we agree. We certainly agree that we want to evaluate this upcoming Sunday meeting, see how things went. We're
Yeah.
going to do, I think, another survey, a quick survey, get some data. Very soon thereafter, because of the way the special town meeting is set up, we're going to have to set up for that meeting, which I guess we have to finalize that date. Is that today we're going to do that? And I think we would want to apply lessons learned into that one, right? Because that might be a long meeting as well, thanks to Julie and her crew. And so I think it's probably appropriate. Some people said, yeah, we agree, it should be more. Some people said, we really were a policy committee, and now that we're policy sort of set, we didn't really sign up to be an implementation committee. Maybe there should be a town meeting support committee or something that handles town meeting. We didn't really sign up to organize town meeting. We signed up to study what was wrong with it or what we could improve on and suggest those
Yeah.
improvements. So I guess I don't really know that answer. It's something I intend to discuss with them this week. I think they would probably accept this halfway point. They might not be in love with a whole nother year of it.
Beyond
It's been a
that.
lot of work.
Yeah.
And some of the people are, like poor Brian is, region and school committee, I mean, so they have a lot to do. So I'm okay with this, and I think let's just see. And then maybe what we have to think about is, do we want some kind of group that basically manages the town meeting process going forward?
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank you.
sure. All right, moving along, we are just about to the time of our, so I think we could kind of get started if Julie wanted to come up, unless there's, this is the zoning bylaw amendment, ADU bylaw for the annual town meeting. We were going to discuss this tonight, and Julie Mercer, our town planner, is here.
Yes, here I am.
Welcome.
So Brian, I don't know if you'll enable me to screen share.
Of course.
Just be easier, probably. You can do that.
Should be good.
So. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hi, Julie.
Hey.
I'm going to start kind of at the end, just with what tonight's request is. Sorry, it's a little bit small on the screen. Let me see if I can make it bigger. And I just want to say, oh, nope, never mind. PDF doesn't like that. All right. So in the wee hours of this morning, actually, the planning board voted 6-0-0 to refer this bylaw to you to request pursuant to MGL Chapter 48, Section 5, that you refer it back to them tonight. so that they can have a public hearing. And so the request for tonight is for you to refer this back to the planning board. They do have their public hearing already advertised and scheduled to open on March 24th. All right, let me just jump to the beginning. I have 13 slides, but only 8 of them are really substantive, so hopefully I can get through this quickly. I know you gave me a lot of time on your agenda, so appreciate that. Try not to take it all. So let me just get some of you guys out of my way so I can see what I'm doing. So tonight I'm here to talk to you about the accessory dwelling unit bylaw that the planning board's been working on for the last few months. This is a preview of kind of the presentation I put together for their public hearing later this month. Get a sneak preview. So I went over this the last time I think I met with you in August, so I don't need to go through all the reasons why accessory dwelling units are an important housing policy. I'll start right in on the proposal. So just to give you an overview of what the planning board is proposing for town meeting, they're proposing to actually do away with the entirety of the existing accessory apartment bylaw and replace it with a new bylaw that's for accessory dwelling units that provides for 2 things. So one would be protected use ADUs, and that's the term the state's using to define ADUs that are protected under Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 3, up to 900 square feet. And the bylaw would be aligned with the state law and the state's regulations, and it would provide for a site plan review by the planning board. The second part of this bylaw would deal with ADUs, what we're calling ADUs by special permit, or larger ADUs that would be between 901 and 1,200 square feet. This is something that's allowed under the current bylaw, also a special permit process. And the planning board felt strongly that they wanted to continue to allow larger ADUs in town for people that want them. And the applicability of the zoning is that it's town-wide. So under the ADU regulations from the state, single-family zoning includes any zoning district that allows single-family as a use. So that's the entirety of the town of Carlisle. I was working on the warrant article marketing plan, and I just started with like, okay, so what does a yes vote mean? So yes vote means, first and foremost, that the town would be opting to have a local public process for protected use ADUs. So they're allowed by law, by right. Someone could come in and just get a building permit. What we're saying is we'd like to have a local process, which would include notification to abutters and a public hearing with the planning board, and then would give the planning board the opportunity to reasonably regulate the protected use ADUs. Sorry.
Is a site plan review then a requirement? Because I thought they could do it by right without a site plan review.
So site plan review is considered a by right process.
So they still have to, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it allows for a discussion at the planning board level with a notification to abutters and an ability for the planning board to add reasonable regulations versus just someone coming in and applying for a building permit. And now obviously all the other jurisdictions like apply still,
You
right?
have to
Board
follow
of
the
Health,
law, but they can't
Wetlands Protection Act.
make
all
something
those
up to
things.
deny you.
Say it again?
You have to comply with all the regulations, but they can't just categorically say no.
Right.
If you follow those things, by
Correct.
right, you then can build, I guess.
Right, so it's not discretionary, like the planning board still has to approve it, right? Did you have another question, Travis?
Nope.
Okay. So a yes vote also means that property owners would still be able to apply for a larger ADU, up to 1,200 square feet, and that would be a special permit process. The special permit process is discretionary, meaning that the planning board has the ability to deny, and they can negotiate and regulate and condition for additional things that they feel would render the use not substantially more detrimental to the neighborhood. And this is a right that property owners currently have now under the current bylaw. The provisions are clear and consistent between by right ADUs and larger ADUs. And I'll get into this a little bit in a minute, but basically what the planning board's doing here in most cases is aligning the minimum requirements, use and dimensional regulations, calculation methodology, and design standards for both the protected use ADUs and the larger ADUs. And what this means, and this is where I have my little arrow here. Let me see if I can use my cursor. One of the results of this is that it means that larger ADUs are actually allowed under more circumstances than they are in the current bylaw. So one example of this is the current bylaw requires a 2-acre lot for an ADU up to 1,200 square feet. But if we align the larger ADUs with the protected use ADUs and we mostly follow the state law and regulations, we would be allowing the larger ADUs in more circumstances than we do currently. And then a yes vote also means that the planning board maintains the ability to deny the larger ADUs like they have today. They don't have a history or pattern or even proclivity to do that, but they maintain that right. And then the town also would maintain the cap on the total number of ADUs. So the current bylaw has a cap of 75. And the planning board wants to we can keep the cap for the ADUs by special permit, so.
How many ADUs are there currently within that cap?
So the planning board's issued 36 permits in 36 years. I have a bunch of data I can show you, like, later.
There's a real gold rush going on here.
Not
Are
all.
any of them larger?
Yes, John and I did some calculations, and I can get into like the details later, but yeah. And then of course, like compliance with local Board of Health regulations and all other state and local regulations, like is still required. This doesn't get around that. So before I get into how the by right ADU and the larger ADUs are aligned, I want to talk to you about the main goal for why the planning board decided to do this. The main goal is to limit the number of ADUs to 1 per lot. So a little background information on this is that the state regulations are unclear. They don't really say this, but the state has been very clear that their intent is that any lot, even lots with an existing ADU, can have a protected use ADU. So what this would mean is that lots with the special permit accessory apartment that's bigger than the 900 square feet, those property owners would still be eligible to come in and get a protected use up to 900 square foot ADU. So the planning board wants to try to craft language that would give an either or choice for people. And they figured that the best way to achieve that is to align the provisions, the state provisions with the local provisions as much as possible to make it harder for the state to reject this either or approach. So the jury's still out on whether this is going to be a successful approach. The initial feedback from town council is that it doesn't hurt to try. It seems like a reasonable way to do it, and it doesn't hurt to try, but we do need to get feedback from the Attorney General's office on that. But that is the goal for why they want to align the provisions.
Sorry, Julie, what's the either and the or on that?
So someone could either have a protected use ADU or a larger ADU of
One
9.
or the other, they have to
Right,
pick.
one or the other versus both.
If they,
Yeah.
okay.
And
So
what's the impetus for this effort now? Is there something that's prompting this proposal in terms of what's being requested or what we've seen in the
No,
past?
it's just kind of getting ahead of it. And there are other protections and limitations, right, on someone's ability to do that. Probably
Okay.
the big one here in Carlisle would be Title V,
Okay.
right? But just putting protections in place now to prevent against that.
So this isn't related to some external thing like MBTA communities or all this other stuff?
It's
that's-
not,
okay.
yeah, where's my
Okay.
water? Did I put it somewhere? Oh, anyway. It's
It's
okay.
Yep.
So,
So
yeah,
knowledge,
it's
yeah.
not, and there's a variety of reasons why, like, if that were allowed, it wouldn't neatly align with MBTA communities. Thank you so much,
Okay.
Karen. But that's a whole nother conversation to have,
Yeah,
actually.
absolutely.
It's a very good question. So that is the main goal of this approach. One result of this actually is that it then results in provisions that are clear and consistent across the 2 different types of ADUs, which can help streamline and simplify requirements for applicants and make the review process for staff and the board actually easier. But I wouldn't say that would be the main reason why they want to do this, right? Okay, so really quick, how the by right ADU and the larger ADU provisions align. So the left-hand column is how they align with each other, and then the right-hand column is whether they align with state law. So we're using all the definitions from the state regulations with no modifications to any of the definitions. We did add in some definitions for local to account for the special permit process for some of the ADUs, but they align with the state definitions. And that obviously aligns with the state law. The allowance for these in single-family zoning districts, those are aligned, and those align with the state law. And then allowing them in pre-existing non-conforming structures and on pre-existing non-conforming lots. That's language from the state, and so that would be for both types of ADUs. The state also.
Julie, before you
Sorry.
continue from that, in other words, if your house or your property's been grandfathered from history, it's presently non-complying, you can't be penalized to not have an ADU because of that.
Correct.
Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
And then another thing that the state is saying is that the ADUs shall only comply with the most permissive setbacks. So if in this town, we have the same setback requirements for the principal structure and the accessory structure, but if we had different ones, we would have to allow the protected use ADU to align with whatever the most permissive setback requirements are, and then also dimensional standards. So the proposal is to align this with like what we require right now for single family, and that aligns with the state.
Another dumb question, are these detached, attached, or either?
Both.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you live in a non-compliant structure and you do like a major reno, everything has to go back to code, right?
Mhm.
There's some parting line where.
Yep.
I suppose if you do your kitchen, it's okay, but if you do everything, it's not. So the ADU then is considered like a minor renovation in that world, right? In other words, we said it's not.
I would have to defer to
triggering.
John on that.
Okay. Well, you're saying allowed.
So I'm talking about zoning, so setbacks,
So from a zoning
dimension, from a
standpoint,
zone,
it's
yeah.
allowed.
As
It
this is
doesn't mean
my
that you
area.
might not trigger
Right,
a bunch of compliance issues in your house if you do it.
right, yeah, I'm talking about zoning,
Okay,
strictly
thank you.
zoning, stay in my lane.
Yeah.
And then, so how gross floor area will be measured, that's another one where the state has a definition for protected use ADUs, we adopted the same definition for the larger ADUs, that makes this much simpler for everybody involved, and it aligns with the law. And then 1 ADU per lot, whether it's, like I said, whether protected use or the larger, and that it's unclear whether that complies with the state law or not. Jury's still out. Parking, so the state says we can only require 1 space for every protected use ADU, so we're doing the same thing for the larger ADUs. We're requiring 1 space. That doesn't mean someone can't provide more, right? And then owner occupancy is not allowed to be required. So the owner occupancy is currently in the bylaw for accessory apartments, won't be anymore. Short-term rentals, the state allows towns to restrict the use of protected use ADUs for short-term rentals. What the planning board wants to do is restrict them for both types of ADU in the instance in which the principal dwelling is owner-occupied. So if the principal dwelling is owner-occupied, then a protected use ADU or larger ADU could be used as a short-term rental. So that's what's on the table for that.
So you can't Airbnb your house and the ADU.
So, right.
Could you live in the ADU and Airbnb your house?
That's a great question, which the planning board talked about last night. And this bylaw is just about the ADUs, right? So, and currently in our bylaw, we don't have a restriction on Airbnb or short-term rental
Do we as a town have
for,
any objections
no.
to Airbnb?
We don't have restrictions on that currently, right? So if someone wanted to live in the ADU, right, and short-term rental, their primary dwelling, this bylaw doesn't really talk about that.
Okay, but
our,
today,
yeah.
without forgetting the ADU, anybody could Airbnb their house. There's no like.
As far as I know,
Okay.
yeah. And then.
Kate's taking notes.
Oh.
here.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure what you just said was correct, because you could ADU your house, but if you had you could Airbnb your house.
Yep.
But if you had an ADU in there,
No, I understand that.
then, okay,
That might complicate.
then you can't, because now you're not living in the house, right?
No, you
Unless
can't
you're
ADU.
living in the
You could
ADU.
mothball the ADU. You could shut it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay,
right.
yes.
I mean, it's separate
Yes,
things.
okay,
I'm
so
just
as
curious
long
about
as
the
that's
Airbnb
Totally clear, yeah,
rules.
okay, got it, okay.
Is it clear? Okay. And then the planning board has some design standards. Most of them comply with the state law. There's one that, as far as we know, most of them comply. There's one that may not, which I'll get into in a little bit.
Are you getting into septic stuff?
Nope, that's not my lane.
It's just zoning.
But that's, ADUs have a bathroom in them, right?
So,
Or a bedroom
Title
or
V
whatever
and
it is.
local Board of Health regulations
Yeah.
still apply to these,
Okay.
yes.
So, but is it, I know it's not your lane, but is that like adding another bedroom?
They have
It's
a
a
whole review
bedroom-driven thing,
process,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Okay,
Yep.
so they don't distinguish, it's a dwelling with a certain number, right?
They do have provisions for multi-use dwellings, which is 2 or more, which includes accessory apartments.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Accessory dwelling units. So a few ways in which they differ, right, and this list is short because the whole intention was to align them as much as possible. So obviously the sizes are different, the processes are different. The by right ADUs cannot have a cap, right? We can't say there's a maximum number allowed in town because they're allowed on every single family lot. But the larger ADUs can have a cap. The planning board has reduced the cap from 75 to 40 partly to account for the fact that the town has already issued a bunch of these. And this would be 40 additional going forward from the effective date of the bylaw. And then the one thing here that differs and may not be allowed is that the state is clear that modular dwelling units must be allowed to be, like ADUs can be modular dwelling units, right? And in their definition, they originally excluded manufactured homes. Then in their final regulations definitions, they took that exclusion out. The planning board wants to add it back in, but add it into the design standards. Instead of adding it back into the definitions, add it into the design standards.
But that would be only for the 901 to 1,200 square foot.
Right, and then for the larger ones, modular dwelling units are not really considered, they're not allowed, right? So this is.
So it's
this
the
is-
smaller one.
And
So
when
it's
they
for the
say
smaller
modular,
ones.
are they thinking, like
A trailer?
trailer?
I think that's what they're, well, I don't wanna speak for
Okay,
them,
because
it's a
I'm
whole
thinking
conversation.
there's, Deck House and Acorn were modular houses. So, and they don't, we have them all over town.
Right.
So, that's why I'd
The
like to see the
state-
definition of
base-
that.
The definition is in the draft
Okay.
bylaw, yeah.
That'd be
And I'll have to get
foundation,
smarter about
that's
this,
all
like
sorts
before
of-
town meeting.
Yeah, I mean,
But,
Right.
um,
This is a good practice.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
actually, I guess, a trial run, right, for like, you guys give me all your feedback and then I can make it smarter for next time. So there are some things that are lost, transitioning from the accessory apartment to the ADU by special permit, right? So this is the larger ones, right? So I don't wanna overlook this, right? So certain, like I discussed earlier, certain restrictions on where and when the larger accessory apartments or ADUs are allowed, like the lot size, the zoning districts they're allowed in, the fact that they would also be allowed in non-conforming structures and on non-conforming lots, like those are lost with this, right? Because now we're aligning it with what the state has said. The cap, as I mentioned, they're proposing to reduce it from 75 to 40. And then there's no mention of attached versus detached like we have in the current cap. It's like 75 total, 25 can be detached. That language is gone.
Just on that, if we reduce the cap to 40, and we have 36,
So it's actually not, so
are we not counting the 36?
here, let me just jump ahead real
Okay.
quick. Yeah.
We just, there's
So
4 more.
36 permits in 36 years,
Yeah.
right? 4 were never built. So 4, according to the way that we do this, like don't count towards the cap
Okay.
anymore, right? And then of the remaining 32, 9 to 11 of them will now qualify as protected use because they're under that 900 square feet
Okay.
and
Oh.
they are not subject to special permit conditions or anything like
Or the
that.
cap.
Okay.
So there's 9 definitely, and then there's 2 that are like questionable. We need more information on before we can, right? So
But the broader picture is that eats away at, the ones that aren't all those things do count towards the cap.
right, so it'd be about 22 maybe, right?
Okay.
Julie, so I'm sorry if I missed it, but prior to this, there were 2 different rules, ADUs and accessory apartments?
So prior to this, we just had the accessory apartment bylaw.
No ADU, just accessory.
We just called it accessory apartment up to 1,200 square feet,
And you're
right?
sort
So
of combining these things in them.
right, yes, and so some were, and original ones that were permitted were less than 900 square feet, right?
Yeah.
And those, based on the new way gross floor area is calculated, some of those now kind of are no longer subject to the special permit restrictions that are on them. And that's something that the state has made very clear in their regulations. Those are now considered protected use.
So there's sort of net less than 75, that's what you're saying.
Right. Depends on how you look
Well,
at it, but
less
yeah.
than 36.
Well,
Right.
Right.
they used to,
Here, I'll go back.
they used to have the cap at 75.
Right.
Or 40.
And there's been less than 30 of them built, so,
Right, but if
40.
our cap goes from 75 to 40,
so they've kind of made it a few less than
There's
there
a net
used to be.
reduction in
yeah.
capacity.
right. There
Originally.
won't be that many, to
Yeah.
Scott's point.
Okay.
Should cover the next 32 years.
Yeah, but
Well,
interesting that if you look at the dates though, 18 in the first, what is that, 26, whatever number of years, and then it's sped up from 2017 to 2024.
Get them while they're hot.
Well, actually, we've had an aging population. The COA has done some education around it about what is necessary, and that's what's kind of
But
happened.
so that, I mean, isn't the larger question then, if we socially believe that and we want either affordability or allow seniors to remain in the town, why are we knocking down the cap? Why don't-
That's why I'm pointing it out.
Maybe Julie wants to.
Did the
Weigh in
planning
on
board
Part of why I'm put,
talk about that issue in that way?
Not in that way.
Okay.
there is no cap on under 900 square feet.
No.
So,
Right.
so we could have every lot in Carlisle with one if it met all the other requirements of Title V and everything.
But maybe people don't want to live in 900 square feet dwelling.
Well,
Do
and
you
that's
like
why the
living
planning
in
board
900
wants to
square
allow
feet?
more.
That's like a college apartment.
This is what the state's mandated, and
Are
obviously
they
we're.
mandating
that's
40?
because,
The
No,
cap.
no, the 1,200 is what.
I
what
understand
the
that, but I'm
town, the
saying
planning-
we're capping the 1,200. Like, why? Like, why?
I think it's something that maybe they're testing out, and that over in time, we'll see how it goes, and maybe the town decides it wants to expand the cap.
Okay?
I
How does
don't have
one-
an answer, though, I haven't been listening to the planning board.
How does one change, like if you, what's the process to change a cap? Is that,
Go back to town meeting,
okay.
yeah.
And does all of this have to get reviewed by the state and approved?
Yeah, so,
The whole bylaw,
the
right?
typical bylaw process, right, will happen,
Yeah.
but the state's also offered, well, should I explain the typical process that happens?
How are we doing on time?
I can do it real quick.
Briefly?
We've
Do
got
it in 2
till
seconds.
7:45.
So after the town meeting vote, if it's approved or denied, however, but let's say approved, right? The town has 30 days to file paperwork with the state, and then the Attorney General's office has 90 days to issue an opinion. So they'll review it then. But now, there's like a housing, I forget what they call it.
yeah.
I always
I
forget
forget
the
what
middle
it-
word.
I
There's
know.
like housing advocacy, it's not that, but unit at the Attorney General's office, and they've offered to do pre-review of some of these bylaws. And
That's great.
yeah, and they're lawyers, and so we
Yeah.
have our town council like involved, and then we can have lawyers from the state also giving us,
Before it goes to
Yeah,
town meeting,
right.
right?
so, where was I? The owner occupancy requirement goes away. The permit renewal requirement when the property changes hands, that's something that's not contemplated in this bylaw. It probably could be though. When I was writing this, I was thinking, oh, maybe that's one we would want to keep. And then the affordable accessory apartment provisions are also not in this. It doesn't mean that it can't happen, right? It just means that they're not.
So those are AAs that are priced at some,
Right, like,
and there's no cap, are they by rate as well, or how?
so it's not something that's contemplated by the state in the state law or in the state regulations. It's something we had in the current bylaw, and it was not utilized.
So it
to
goes
have.
away?
So it's not in this new bylaw, but it doesn't
Right.
necessarily mean it can't
But
happen.
is the new bylaw superseding the old bylaw?
Then, yes,
So that means it goes away?
it goes away,
Right.
yes. It doesn't mean it can't happen.
Sometime.
But it goes
There
away.
hasn't been a single unit
Right.
built in the state. It just, this concept
Okay,
is
I'm just-
not.
Yeah, I'm just asking.
Right, there aren't enough incentives, among other things.
Right.
So that landscape is changing, so
Yeah.
maybe will change. Okay, and then just really quick, like our timeline in context of the state timeline. So the law became effective in early February. The legal ad for the public hearing for the planning board was published in late February, so that was the time frame when if someone came in, they could have just gotten a building permit, right? Obviously, wetlands, Board of Health, all that too, right? But not planning board. No one applied for or received a building permit during that time. Now that the legal ad's published notifying the hearing, the planning board, anyone who comes in actually is subject to whatever the zoning ends up being. It's a clawback provision. So I've actually spoken to 3 people this week, and because I call it the transition phase that we're in right now. So they go ahead at their own risk, right? If they want to keep going and apply, they just need to know, like, what I'm doing is that I'm advising them to follow the regulations that we're working on.
2026, Julie?
Say it again?
No, this is now.
This is now.
This is
Could it
now.
be now if we're not going to vote on it till May?
Well, this is all
This
the
is the
pre-work.
state.
Oh, the ADU
Yeah.
became, okay, I see. All right.
Right.
How, with all the public hearing, presuming you were on the fall town meeting, would you have to redo the entire?
Yep. So the public hearing has to be within 6 months of the town meeting vote.
6 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's so many timelines attached to all of these things. So the public hearing will open on the 24th. The planning board has scheduled for it to continue at 2 additional meetings in April and then town meeting in May.
Okay.
Want a motion?
And then,
Yeah.
and then here we are with my
What
request.
do we have to do?
And just some upcoming things that I talked about a little bit.
Refer it to the planning board for public hearing. Wow, that's our job.
Yeah.
You're an elected board, right?
Yeah,
It's a mass general law.
I figure you could do what you wanted. Okay.
I move
They
to-
can, but.
And by referring, you're just referring?
Right,
It's
we're not
I don't-
giving
it's
it our
a
blessing.
stupid step.
It's just a administrative step?
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, you have a hand up.
Have a
Taking
hand up.
comments or not?
Oh, sure, we have a minute or two for a few comments. I see that there's, thank you for, Ryan, for letting me know. Christina, I see you have your hand up. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, please. Actually, a comment. I've been following, and thank you, I've been following the planning board meetings I've been attending. My understanding is one of the reasons they have decided to put a cap on, and Julie, please correct me if I'm wrong, but to put a cap on the 1,200 square foot special permit ADUs is because now with the new law, the parcel, neither unit needs to be owner occupied, and it seems like there's the ability to condoize, if that's a word, the parcel, the units on the parcel, and so it seems like there could be the possibility of selling each one separately, and a 1,200 square foot individual unit, if you will, is a lot more attractive for developers to come in, buy a property, build an ADU, and then sell each one separately, effectively sort of negating the thought that ADUs are being built to help residents who are living on the property. And so that was definitely a discussion that took place, and I think that possibly factored into the decision to put a cap, or to keep the cap on
Great.
the larger ones.
Thank you. And can you just tell
Thanks.
us your address for the record?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Just
Where's
the
Shamrock
street.
Hill?
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Just the street?
And the
I
road
think so.
code, please.
Name and street, yeah.
Just name and street.
Okay.
And your
Are there-
social, just in case.
Any other quick questions on this? Julie?
Can I just ask one, a
Yeah.
very brief, stepping back, executive summary, why do they want to, like, what is, they voted in favor of this. Could you just recap in a couple of bullet points what the high-level goals are of this and why they believe this is an improvement over what we currently have? I know you have
Great
those
question.
points, but at a very,
Yeah.
at the highest of high levels, seems like there's some pros
Yeah.
and cons. Is it really
Right.
just to clarify?
No,
and
I
have a
think
better
it's
process?
primarily to have a local process for
Okay.
the by right ADUs, right, that folds into and relates to our process for the larger ones.
Okay.
And to try to achieve the ability to have just one ADU per lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we have to send this back, if we choose, back to the planning board. So can I get a
I
motion?
move to refer the proposed zoning bylaw amendment to the planning board in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 5.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Once you do that, you have your hearing. We still have to decide whether it goes on our agenda, right?
On the town meeting
Town meeting warrant.
warrant, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay,
And Julie had made a case why
well, it should be.
it should be.
And we don't have to wait for the hearing to decide that, right? That's an independent thing, right?
It's independent, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so it's motion, it's been seconded, all in favor? Aye. None opposed. Okay, 7:45, we're gonna move on to the next
Right,
topic.
Julie.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thanks, Stephen.
So we have until 8:05, but we're going to next meet with we're going to review the fiscal year '24 town audit exit conference.
I think another gentleman online.
Yep,
Kelly is.
it looks like, yep, thank you. Kelly's online, and we have someone from CBiz, Scott McIntyre, is that right?
Yes.
Okay, well,
Yes.
welcome.
Good evening. We have Scott and Derek here to go over FY24 audit. We finished up the audit within the last month roughly. So the financial statements are in your meeting packet tonight, and that's what they're gonna present.
Thank you, Kelly. I'd also like to introduce Derek Janelo on the call in the meeting. Derek was out in the field much more than I was, and just inviting him to these types of meetings is just a good way to continue his excellent development, to see what piques the interest of the board in answering questions and the give and take about the conversation that we're having about how the audit went. Also, we issue what we call a governance letter, and I'm gonna share my screen in just a minute. I'm gonna very quickly walk through the governance letter and the financial statements. It's gonna be a rather brisk walkthrough. It's a lot to get through in a short period of time, but we're really gonna hit the high points. So if I may try to share my screen real quickly.
You're good to go, Scott.
Derek, I'm gonna ask if you would just make sure I have the governance letter up there. I believe that I do, but,
Yep, there it is.
thanks, Derek. All right, I'm just gonna walk through the governance letter real quickly. We call it a governance letter because our professional standards, the standards known as generally accepted auditing standards in the United States, as well as generally accepted auditing standards, require we report this information to, the phrase that's in the standards is those charged with governance. Thus, it's a little bit of a slang term, if you will, but it's in our professions become known as a governance letter. It tells you a lot in here, and in my opinion, this is the highlight of the audit. We're gonna get to the financial statements, we're gonna look at your fund balance, we're going to look at budget versus actual results, but I really think this governance letter is the highlight. It tells you our responsibilities under the auditing standards that we followed. It tells you what our planned timing and scope of the audit was, as outlined in our engagement letter. You have some significant audit findings, and I will tell you that's a standard heading. The rest of the information underneath here is very normal and customary, and the word findings is probably not the best use of language, in my opinion. But it's what the professional standards require us to use. We have the qualitative aspects of the accounting that takes place in Carlisle. That's a fancy way of talking about the significant estimates that are present in your financial statements. We list 3 of them right here because we think those are the most significant. That doesn't mean there aren't others. The estimated useful lives and depreciation of your capital assets, the net pension liability and the related deferral accounts, and the net and total OPEB liability in those deferral accounts. We think those disclosures, while they're based on estimates, are neutral, clear, and very concise. So, moving down, this is what area I always like to talk about. It's difficulties encountered during the performance of the audit. Happy to be able to report that with Carlisle, there were no significant difficulties in dealing with management in completing our audit. Independence is, of course, a big item in our profession. One thing that is a little bit new in this letter that wasn't in prior letters, because standards evolve all the time, just like accounting standards change, so do auditing standards. where we talk about, we were engaged to prepare the government-wide financial statements. We do this in Carlisle, and we do it in virtually 98% of all of our clients here in New England, where technically preparing financial statements is a non-audit service. So again, our professional standards require us to communicate to you that in addition to performing the audit, we also did a non-audit service, and we helped you prepare your government-wide financial statements. Nothing to be concerned about in our opinion. Happy to be able to report that there were no uncorrected misstatements. In other words, a fancy way of saying, we found that the books and records were in good working order, and we did not need to propose any significant adjustments for your financial statements to be in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. The rest of the letter is pretty standard. It talks about a whole lot of other things. We understand that management is not consulted with other auditors, those types of things. But in general, I would look at this governance letter as the substantial results of our audit. And then maybe the most basic way that I can really think about describing that is our audit went well. And as I said a second ago, we found your books and records to be in good working order. In other words, key account reconciliations are taking place on a regular and timely basis. So, I'm going to flip over to the financial statements now. These are, again, this is our independent auditor's report. I'm not going to walk through this in detail, and I'm actually only going to hit a few pages in the financial statements. I'm going to make reference to print pages and PDF pages. If you're following along on the screen, wonderful. I'll be going to the PDF pages, but I'll get, for those who might be following along with a hard copy, I will give a print page reference, and if you're following along online with your own copy of the PDF of the financials, I'll give you that page number as well. Our independent auditor's report is what we call a clean opinion. Technically, it's called an unmodified opinion. In other words, our opinion has no modifications to it. It's thought of as the best type of auditor's opinion you can receive, that based on the audit work that we did, in accordance with those two sets of auditing standards that I mentioned earlier, generally accepted auditing standards in the United States and generally accepted government auditing standards, in our opinion, your financial statements are materially fairly presented in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles in the United States. Now, following the opinion is your management's discussion and analysis, sometimes referred to as the MD&A. We think it's a great resource to go back to at a later point in time to understand why certain key account balances have changed. And in fact, tonight, when we go through these financial statements, I'm going to focus primarily on the general fund, because our experience tells us that that's where most of the focus of readers is on the general fund. And we're going to look there and look at fund balance accounts, as well as your budget versus actual accounts. And then I'm going to go back to page, I believe it's 9 in MD&A, which will hopefully connect the dots for you, give you something to take away from this conversation about the key account balance, which is your unassigned fund balance in your general fund. But before we get there, as I mentioned, following the opinion is your management's discussion and analysis. And then there are your long-term financial statements. Included in here are both a long-term perspective financial statement and a short-term perspective. Print page 13, 12 and 13 are your long-term perspective financial statements. Most of the time, I would only focus on these two accounts. The net pension liability and the net OPEB liability, there's a wealth of disclosures in the footnotes to your financial statements. What I'll do this evening, because it looks like you have a very busy agenda, I will take questions that the board may have on these, but I won't specifically get into any detail unless there's a desire to when we conclude the conversation about the general fund and budgetary results. So I'm going to go all the way over to print page 15, and if you're following along, PDF page 17. We're going to look at your governmental funds financial statements. Most of our focus is going to be on that first column of numbers, the general fund, but I did want to point out there are three other columns before the totals. Your community preservation fund, that qualifies as what is known as a major fund for the town, based on its size relative to the overall community, as does your American Rescue Plan fund, where you receive, what's different about the ARPA fund, as opposed to other grants, is with the ARPA funds, you receive the money up front. So you were sitting on $719,000, and you hadn't recognized about $686,000 of that. You recognize that as, when the money came in, but you recognize it as revenue when you spend the money. So you'll recognize that in fiscal year 2025. Just wanted to point out, those are also known as major funds, just the way the general fund is. Then you have this column called the non-major governmental funds. That's really a aggregation, if you will, of all of the much smaller funds. There might be some capital projects in there, some other grants could be accounted for in there. Your permanent funds would be included in there as well, so.
Your revolving.
These major funds are the same major funds as the prior year, so there was no real change in presentation. And with the general fund, the focus really is in the fund balance section of your balance sheet. Really, it's the difference between your assets and your liabilities. I do want to just point out that, remember, this is what I refer to as the short-term perspective. It's not quite cash basis. Technically, it's called modified accrual basis, but it's quite similar to cash basis. So the difference between your assets and your liabilities as of 6/30/2024 was $8.9 million, broken down into three categories. Your unassigned fund balance of $6.3 million, assigned fund balance of $385,000, and your committed fund balance of $2.2 million. Generally speaking, almost all of the focus is on your unassigned fund balance. This unassigned fund balance as of June 30, 2024 is up about $450,000 over the prior year. So it's nice to see a nice increase in that key account balance. I also want to point out that there are really two components to this number. The two components are highlighted in the footnotes, not necessarily going to turn there. The way the town keeps its books and records, as is the case with all the communities in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Kelly would have a general fund in her trial accounting system, as well as a general stabilization fund, separate accounting entities within the financial management system of the town of Carlisle. She's required to do that based on the way the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Division of Local Services requires her to do that. But for GAAP, or generally accepted accounting purposes, those two columns, those two funds need to be consolidated together. Essentially, the stabilization fund is really a byproduct of the general fund, so it doesn't meet the definition of being a standalone fund. So just as a quick point of reference, of that $6.3 million, $5 million of that represents the general fund of the community, and that really is the starting point for certifying your free cash. And about $1.3 million of that represents your general stabilization account. And both of those numbers, both of those components of the numbers, are also up over the same period of time of a year ago, or June 30, 2023. So keeping in mind this $6.3 million, and I indicated it was about a $4.5 million, $450,000 increase over the prior year. Let's look at why that changed. And that account balance will change based primarily on budgetary results.
Page 13.
So I'm going to turn to print page 59 or PDF page 61. And this, if unassigned fund balance is the first place that most readers turn to, the budget versus actual page is generally speaking the second. The focus really is on this last column of numbers here, the variance of the actual results of operations on the budgetary basis compared with the budget. And what this statement is telling you is that on the revenue side of your equation, you collected $827,000 more than you anticipated. A lot of that is coming, as in Carlisle, as it is in most communities right now, on the motor vehicle excise tax. Licenses and permits and investment income in fiscal year 2024 were also up. So you can see there's some nice breakdown between the various revenue types that give you a favorable results of operation, budget to actual wise, of $827,000 on the revenue side of your equation. On the expenditure side of your equation, almost the exact same number, if you will. Unspent and unencumbered appropriations of $816,000. You add those two numbers up, the 827 and the 816, you have budgetary results of operations before transfers of $1.6 million. A couple of things go on with transfers, as they always do. So the bottom line in the lower right-hand corner of print page 59, the budgetary results are a positive $1.9 million. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm actually going to go back to a page in the MD&A to hopefully connect the dots and give you a sentence that the town added to the financial statements as to, we've got positive
Yeah, I'm gonna have to-
budgetary results of operations of 1.8, but remembering, we mentioned that the unassigned fund balance only went up by about $450,000.
Hey, Scott.
$4.5 million again.
I've got to interrupt you. I apologize. We do have limited time this evening, and I know you're going into great detail. My understanding is that you've met with with Dave Modell
And Mark, I think, was there, right? Mark, raise your hand. Yep.
Right, and have been through this audit, and we very much appreciate the high-level overview and as well as the assurance that everything has, turned out well. We've been through it, we have it in our packet, and we've reviewed it as well. So I was going to ask if there are any questions, though, from the select board.
I have one, and
Sure.
that's about the non-major governmental funds. I know we were focusing on the general fund, but I'd like to know a little more about what's in there. Are those our revolving accounts? Or what is that? Because it's still a fairly sizable chunk of money.
Yeah. Revolving accounts are probably the single biggest component of that, like a recreation revolving account and things like that. There are capital projects that are in there as well. If, I won't take any more time, but I will tell you that if you were to look on print page 38 or PDF page 40, you would find a detail to those numbers.
Okay, so, all right. I guess I'll just do that on my own, thanks.
Okay. Is there anything else from the select board?
I just had a quick question. This may be beyond the scope of what we're discussing, but the net pension liability, the net OPEB liability together total, they're 16 million and 8.7 million respectively, totaling about 25 million. Is that total amount relative to our other financial positions? Is there an assessment around that in terms of where we are as a community? Is that a high number, a low number? Are we tracking? Is the trend of those liabilities where we want it to be? Or is that something you look at, or is that beyond the scope of what you look at?
Well, it's a little bit of a complicated answer to that. What I will tell you on the pension liability is that is your proportional share of the overall Middlesex County unfunded pension liability. So if you're the number's in the footnotes, I'm not going to turn there, if you're a 2.5% member of based on payroll, if you're a 2.5% contributor into the Middlesex County retirement system, your liability is 2.5% of the
Right.
overall liability. Further, and this is also outlined in the footnotes, you are on a funding schedule, and I believe, and Kelly, I'm sure can get you the exact date. I don't want to take too much time here, but I believe it's like 2035 or 2036
Right.
that the system is scheduled to be fully funded. In other words, if you keep doing what you're doing and and the system makes all of the actuarial assumptions as far as earnings and things like that, that pension liability goes to zero in 2035, 2037. Forgive me, I don't know that number off the top of my head, but Kelly could get it to you quite easily.
Okay.
On the OPEB side of things, that's a little bit of a different story. You are funding it with a trust, and there's some assumptions in there to continue funding it, maybe even at greater rates in future years, so that becomes fully funded, but I think that's a few years away.
Okay.
Okay.
But none of those numbers, I do a lot of these meetings, none of those numbers, in my opinion, should necessarily be overly concerning. Rating agencies do look at them, but they like to know that they will definitely know that your pension liability is going to mature in 2035, 2037, in that range. And they will also look at how well funded your OPEB plan is and what are you doing to escalate funding. And you can, and the town's management team has the ability to point that out to a rating agency very well.
Great.
27% funded.
Okay.
But I would say there's a whole separate, I mean, these auditors are looking at our financial picture. They're not doing actuarial analyses, right? We have a separate group, Kelly, it's Odyssey, who was it that, what's the group that does?
That's correct. Yep, Odyssey Advisors.
Yeah, and we sit with them as well, and we get, oh, you got a buddy. They, we go in depth on the actuarial assumptions, on the rates of return, you know, the sensitivity analysis,
Discount rates.
all that stuff, too, you know, and I think we're okay. I mean, I think the staff is doing a good job.
All right, well, we do have a packed agenda for tonight, so we are going to have to kind of end this part of our analysis or our thoughts on it. But Scott, we appreciate it. It's Derek, is that right? Appreciate your time this evening. And Kelly, thank you for coming on. And
Kelly.
it's really helpful, and it's great to know that we're in good shape from, you know, in our audit. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, folks. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly.
All right, so I'd like to move on. It's 8:05, and we have a meeting agenda for a joint meeting with the Finance Committee for our annual town meeting discussion. So I'd invite the Finance Committee to come forward. And if you wanted to open your meeting, that's great.
All right.
Perfect.
We're going to do a roll call because we have some people on the line. So if we could do a roll call attendance.
Bernstein.
Cataccio here.
Dilly, we missed Nathan.
Oh, sorry, Nathan. I'm still not used to that.
Dilly here too.
Want to start
Right.
over?
We get Dilly up?
Yep.
All right, Leland.
Liang here.
Schoenberg here.
Okay. Meeting's open.
Great. We have one other committee that happens to be here as well. I think, do we have a quorum for this or not? If you, me,
Counting you, we do.
well, I'm here, so maybe we should open the MFC meeting.
Was
so
it
that-
posted as?
It was posted, yes, as a meeting.
So I'd like to open the MFC meeting.
I'm present from the Facilities Committee.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't see you, Scott.
And Travis is here. Bill Russo's here. And Jerry Lerman is here.
Great. All right,
Anderson is present.
all right, wonderful.
You want to give a review?
Yeah. I think that'd be a good place to start.
So this is a review of a lot of meetings and a lot of work by the Finance Committee and the Finance team. So I'm going to keep it brief so that the discussion can happen, but I can dive into detail in any of this. So first, I'm going to start with the operating budget. So the summary of the FinCom's recommendation, or the current draft of budget 2, current budget draft 2, is a total budget increase of 4.58%. This includes a CPS assessment of 3.9%, and significant, more than 20% increases to the retirement and the health insurance, as we've been talking about. So that is the overall budget increase. The drivers of that include, I'm sorry, I'm going to jump to the summary and then the drivers. It's not jumping, but it will. So the result of that is as you saw on the last page, a budget request for town meeting of $36,760,350. The other charges or expenses you see here are based off either the current version of the state budget or 5-year averages, as we've done for the last couple of years. On the revenue side, it includes the current state figure for state aid, local receipts, which I'll get to in a second, and free cash, which I'll get to in a second, as changes from draft 1 to draft 2. So the total impact on the budget is a proposed levy increase of almost 1.3 million, or an average tax bill increase of 3.41%. And that includes the following revenue changes. So $100,000 was added to local receipts. You'll note in the presentation on the financial statements, one of the big changes or realizations of revenue in FY24 was motor vehicle excise tax, and that continues to go up. That, in addition to what you'll hear at your next meeting, which is TSAC's recommendation to increase the sticker fund, would cover reasonably this $100,000 increase to local receipts, which you know have been conservative the last couple of years, which is a budgeting best practice, but something to adjust from time to time. The FinCom also added $200,000 in free cash to offset the tax impact of this budget, and $50,000 from the ambulance receipts fund. This was discussed at length. The money here would still allow for the accumulation of funds in that account to pay for an ambulance when the next ambulance comes due. On the expense side, the changes from the last version of the budget you saw to this one include increases for union contracts and the inclusion of all non-union cost increases at a 2% level. So these are exact increases at 2%. Last time you discussed a 2.5% COLA. That would be an additional $23,000 to this budget, or a little under 0.05% to the average tax bill. It also includes an increase of our health insurance to 20% more than last year. This includes a 15.5% increase in our health insurance rates, which has significant impact to employees and the town. It includes the 1% increase in the employee contribution, as has been discussed the last few years, and additional plan use on our insurance, which is a delta of 20% or a little over $330,000 new money. For decreases, the Finance Committee discussed at length removing any excess debt capacity that was in the budget, which is, this is wrong, $150,000. Reducing the CPS budget by $35,000, which will, from our understanding, come primarily from the special ed contingency line, which they had increased this year. They also asked the library to reduce their new fund asked to the MAR, or the ME, which is the minimum funding you need in order to get library state aid. This was discussed at the last meeting and changed to a $1,900 cut in order to avoid our cuts at the library. This also includes reducing the legal budget by $8,000, including CPA funding for 2 positions, the town accountant and the executive assistant who assists in the CPA. This comes from the admin line, which would offset the budget by $8,800. Reducing the CONSCOM budget, which is an unsettled item. It still needs to be discussed with the CONSCOM and the planning board for a combined position or a combined assistant position, which would net $30,000 return to the budget. It removes the Board of Health's request for additional staffing hours for the public health nurse and the health assistant. It removes $3,000 from the COHS transportation line. It removes the entire Youth Commission operating budget. The Youth Commission operates fully on their revolving fund and has not touched this account in years. So that's a pretty easy remove. And then CCHS reported approximately a $25,000 reduction in their budget based off of enrollment shifts and what Concord asked them to do to meet their guideline. So that in total equals that revenue change, and those increases to the budget and the decreases to the budget result in that 3.41% average tax bill increase.
Ryan, what's the total of the adds and the deductions?
So the reductions to the budget are about $250,000
Okay.
total,
Yeah.
and the additions are $350,000 in revenue.
Well, that's revenue, but expenses. So revenue up 350, well, revenue, I know free cash is revenue, but sources are up 350.
Right.
Expenses total how much?
The net is about a $250,000 reduction to the last draft.
So the additional minus the T obligations or whatever is in lowering. And you need that, so you started with a gap, I guess, right?
Of nearly $700,000. Yeah.
So if I add 250 plus, what did you say, 2 1/4?
350 minus 250.
No, it's 350 plus 250 to close the gap, right?
Yes.
That's your-
So that would have closed the gap to 3%, so 600 closed it to 3.41%.
I see, that's a 3.41.
Yep.
And we had this discussion about whether we should use the 200 free cash. Does that knock us below our pad or something, right? Or is that a separate thing? I can't remember now. Last meeting, as reported by the
That-
mosquito,
So I left that for this tonight for you to discuss. with
Yeah.
FinCom.
that's not this.
Whether to put it, well, we'll get to it when he talks about capital, because
Okay.
the capital drop us below 12.
But that's
That's a
all the free
spoiler.
cash that would be applied to the operating budget, just the 200?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Which is in line with what we generally do?
We did, I think, 150 last year and
Little
close to
high.
200 the year before.
Okay, so it's in the ballpark. Okay, got it, thank you.
Okay, so I'd like to give you some background information about building costs and capital costs, and then go into the capital plan, unless there's any more questions about the operating budget.
Well, this is just a spreadsheet. He said.
Just quickly, I want to make sure I caught the numbers right. So the average tax increase is 3.1%?
4.1.
3.41.
4.41. 3.41, okay. Thank you.
The weekend, his long weekend.
And I will add that I can't calculate it exactly, but that is a conservative calculation because of the way our tool is designed. So it's supposed to give you a look at what the tax rate might be, but we can't be exact with that based off values of homes.
Uh-huh.
So I do think that would be the ceiling increase. It'd probably be closer to 3.25 than 3.41, but can't
that-
promise that, and I can't predict the future.
And that was with the 2% COLA factored in for non-union staff? Okay.
Yes, correct?
Yes, I haven't added it. I haven't been told to add it yet.
Yep.
Okay. So important in this discussion is the inclusion of debt in the operating budget, which is included as one of the line items in the budget we just discussed. So this middle section here, this spreadsheet, shows what we're going to be talking about in terms of capital for what's already been approved in the fire truck and what's needed to close the gap to purchase that fire truck from last year, the elevator project and the library coils project, which are going to be major discussion points tonight. So this shows what the annual cost of that borrowing would be at a conservative 5% borrow and how it would impact the budget. So the story that I'm trying to show you here is we can afford the elevator project and the coils project as compared to if we were to keep our debt line the same, keep your debt capacity in the budget from year to year, we can afford this for the next few years. However, these yellow lines indicate things in the capital plan that we would probably have to borrow for, significant projects to include renovations to the town hall, dispatch radios of about $1 million in cost, and the DPW fuel pumps, which we could not fit into this picture until, approximately FY30, FY31.
Ryan, that's just two of like 400 things that we have to find. Why those two?
Because the coils are new, and I just want to show you that they're replacing what we had previously told you in the budget.
Everything else like that MFC's gonna ask for, and Jim Hall's gonna ask for, and everybody asks for, is that all tucked in here too?
So this is just on the borrowing side. A lot of those items from the departments will be paid for with free cash, which is a different calculation. I just wanted to show you where the debt is,
Okay.
so you understand it. And then the other question that's always asked is the ever-looming building projects. So on the left here, for now, have just included police and fire.
So you conveniently left off the zeros, right? So we can understand that.
Yes.
And that group is in dollars K, and the group in the middle is in dollars of one, right?
Yes. So what you're seeing here is
Good point.
the next few years for the police station. So next year would be a interest payment, and then it would hit in FY27. This is the design that you're going to include in the town meeting budget. So this would be to borrow for that $650,000 initial design.
Yeah.
With the building, and this could move a couple years, right? But FY28. So the biggest impact, if everything lined up, would be an additional 4.4% on the average tax bill for those building projects.
Not including the other regular operational increase.
Not including the
Correct.
fourth.
And not including the
Or three.
DPW shed or any other number of
Correct.
capital things.
And this is at, again, 5% interest. If the federal government's gonna cut all of our funding, maybe they can at least cut the interest rate as well.
Long way up for
Which
that.
would help these numbers.
It's gonna go the other way.
Just, at some point, it's gotta give for us, right? On the finance side. All right, so those would be in addition, so I just wanna bookend the conversation with that, so that we can reference it if.
But I'm having trouble putting these pieces together. So the operational side is nominally a 4 point something, but the FinCom did some surgery and borrowed some more cash and got it down to 3.41. So 3.5.
For the average tax
So
bill, that's
the
a
average
huge
tax bill
growth.
just to operate the town,
It's
3.5.
It's 4.58.
Yeah, but they knocked it down a little.
But it's
No,
coming.
it's 4.58, but the 3.14 is when you factor in.
Sources of
Well,
yeah.
free cash is
Offsets.
one of several, but there
And
were also,
growth.
but there
Right.
were some cuts. You also cut.
And increase some revenue assumptions.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
did cut 250 out of the
Yeah.
budget.
Oh, yeah, no, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right, so net though, if I'm a taxpayer, like, to just run the town, I gotta fork over 3.5% more,
Yeah.
just to run the town. Now I go over to the things we wanna buy and build, so can you put that back up?
Sure.
On top of that, right? Go to the right first piece, so the things we need to buy that we use, I guess, excluded debt, that, we can more or less squeeze in most of that stuff.
To that, assuming everything holds and there's no more retirements.
That's use of free cash to get us, borrowing and use of free cash.
keeps debt
So-
nominal.
Right, so
Nominal.
let's just say that's, so I'm still at 3.5 and I
Yeah.
can buy fire trucks and
Yeah.
things. And now I go to the building side and I gotta basically double or more my increase, right? That's basically the picture, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Double your tax.
Yeah,
Yeah.
double my tax.
Double,
Right.
not double your
Not
tax,
double
double
your
your
tax.
tax increase.
Whoa, mosquito. Not double the tax. Double the
Sorry,
increase.
So
tax
in
increase, the
this year-
percentage increase, right.
So if you had, yeah.
And I will say, certainly need to put a working group together this summer to talk about, or earlier if you want. There's a lot of assumptions built in here, including how long to borrow for the buildings.
Yeah,
Is
but
it
it's
20
a
years?
good, you know,
30 years?
overall.
It's a good heuristic, so
Yeah.
I think it would be the standard package of borrowing that you might consider in a conservative way. So will it be 4.4? I'm not sure. It might come lower than that, but famous last
Or
words.
higher.
Yeah.
The costs don't seem to ever go down.
Right.
Right.
All right, so then capital. I think a spreadsheet would be better.
And if we, is it pretty much set that we would use excluded debt for those projects?
Excluded debt for which?
Excluded debt.
For the big projects
Yeah.
that we just finished talking
Yeah.
about.
I would recommend, yes.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Great, so the capital plan, the only changes I can report before you discuss them, and then there are people here to present and all the things that you wanted to have presented, is the school IT infrastructure. So if we purchase on the E-rate program, we can lock in a cost that is approximately $40,000 less than last year. The only caveat is we'd have to back it up. We have to say now that we'll pay for it, even if town meeting said no. So the school has put up their revolving accounts to cover that in an emergency, so we are able to reduce the capital plan for this year and next year by that $40,000 and reduce school IT infrastructure from $112,000 to $90,000 and then nothing next year. It's not a lot, but at least it's some good news.
Yeah.
And then the COHS has said that they're gonna hold off on the, their senior SUV for another year to just analyze the funding of that and then talk about it in the capital process. Additionally, Chapter 90 came in at 425, so the 400,000 will be 375.
It came in higher or lower?
Came in higher than we thought,
Way higher,
shockingly.
50% higher.
Higher's good in this case.
Higher school. More money from us.
So what I did in this chart for
Gotta
you,
keep track of it.
based off of what you requested, was I put the recommended funding source for each item. So whether it's coming from free cash or another fund, and I identified the fund that it would be coming from. And then down below, grouped it into article form. So the MFC article, the 2 debt articles, which would be the library coils and the elevators, the capital, which is essentially free cash. Your warrant articles, which are funding outside of this capital plan.
Where do they
CPA,
get paid for it from?
From free cash. If you
More
want.
free cash.
And then here is a reserve calculation that you're used to now, which is free cash above reserve, or above that 12%.
So meaning we dip below is the negative 117?
So right now, you don't have enough to fund all of this.
Out of
Enough
12
free cash
out
above
of
reserve.
12%.
Yeah.
It maintains 12. So let me ask a town meeting process question. Are we going to present this overview prior to, like, MFC presents its article and blah, blah, blah? So people understand what a yes means and those things, or do you first present, what's the sequencing? Because like Jerry ambles up and he talks about the, the RTU in the building. Like, do they have the context of this picture?
Poor Jerry.
Do they have the context of this picture prior to that?
I would certainly help build that, but that's, the moderator would have the finance committee present that or not. So that would be a question for James.
You would do this before MFC, you would do the budget.
I think so, but with things that are coming up as articles, right?
Yeah.
There's the operational piece,
Well,
which
there's
gets
typically
voted.
if all the articles are approved, you have to.
Yeah,
get
that's,
yeah.
okay,
So you have
so,
to assume all the articles are approved in the.
okay, so that's the question. All right, thank you.
So you have here, I have a report from the fire chief and the police chief on the items that you discussed. Jim's here for the DPW request. The whole MFC is here pretty much for their request, and I think they have some comments about their funding recommendations for next year. So I turn it over to you.
Okay.
To help facilitate the discussion however we can.
Sure. Well, I do see just out of, we have Jim Hall here, so maybe we can start with him. It's a little out of order,
Sure.
but of what we talked about. But Jim, if you want to talk about the roadside mower, I know the select board had questions about that, and maybe you can give us some more insight into that as well as the
Sure, I'd love
FinCom.
to. So when I started, I had a task by Ryan to build a 5-year capital plan, which kind of based off of Gary's old one.
Okay.
And we put some things on there. One of them was a 6-wheel cab chassis sander plow combination that was ordered, and that got stalled in the process, and it was canceled. So on my capital plan, I had requested a truck for 1 year and a truck for 2025 and a truck for 2026, both coming in at an estimated $220 at the time. So when they canceled the first truck, that was a year ongoing process for me checking on them, going, what's going on with this truck? And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they canceled the order. There was $180,000 allocated for that. And so we scrambled around. We were able to find a dealer. The reason for the canceled order was the new emissions standards and things of that nature, engine component parts, very hard to get. So we scrambled around. We found one from Peterbilt, which was considerably higher, about $226. Fortunately, we had some ARPA funding that helped, and I think we requested around 17 from FinCom to balance that whole truck out. So we were able to get that. And then this year coming up, I was requesting another truck, but we can't get one. We just don't manufacture them right now that meet the standards, and the cost is obviously a little too high for this year. So going back, the roadside mower was put on and off of the capital plan for several years. Gary had put it on, and it was moved around from, year to year. And now, because of this truck that we can't get, I decided to move it up, taking into consideration the vendor that we use. We've used them for at least 2 decades. And he's been very reasonable, very good, and we hire him for a 2-week period. And he just went up in his rates this past year, so it's $100 an hour. So for a 2-week period, that's $8,000, and that only gets us the main roads mowed and some trouble spots. So, you know, you're looking at Concord, Westford, Lowell, Bedford River, Eastern Rutland, and that's it, 8,000 a year.
$8,000.
Okay, and so in comparison, and a few trouble spots. So after he's gone, we can't, you know, we're left to our own resources with complaints and from schools and residents alike, hey, this intersection's bad, or we can't get out there. So all year long, we, you know, summer and into fall, we have our crew go out and just do everything by hand.
Do you, Jim, is it that he would not give you more time? He's busy with other towns?
No, he would give us more time. It's just the way I budgeted it out so we can, you know,
I know, but I
8,000.
mean, this is a 20-year payback on that 8,000. Like, I get it that you have more to do.
I'd like to rebut that.
Okay.
Because now he does have a lot of other towns that he does. So if we were to spend the 160 on this,
Yeah.
we could be able to use, I have a guy that's licensed to mow now. We could use it 10 to 12 weeks out of the year. No problem at all.
But I'm asking you, I understand that, Jim, but what I'm asking you is, what's the vendor's name?
Then it's Glenn Cole.
Glenn Cole, is it a guy or a company? Or?
Coal Industries, I would
But he has
guess.
some people,
He's
he's
just
not
a
just
regular
you.
guy. He usually comes himself. But
Okay.
in comparison to hiring him for, you know, $100 an hour and having him stay here 10 weeks, that's 40 grand. If we have our own vehicle and we run it for 4 or 5 years,
Yeah.
that in comparison, that mower pays for itself within 5 years. And we have the extended life of that expectancy is probably 20 to 25 years with routine maintenance and stuff like that. So that's
Okay.
part of the reason I'm advocating for this. I know it's a tough ask, but I think in the long run, it also helps protect my workers from, you know, going into brush that's this high and poison ivy, bees nests. You don't know what you're running into in there. And they do it diligently, they do a great job, but I think this would, you know, allow me to allocate that work elsewhere where, you know, where it's needed in other areas of the town. So I think going by that stat and going by the comparison of hiring Glenn at $100 an hour and a 4 or 5 year period, it would pay for itself. That's about what I have.
How many hours were you saying that these people would go out, your employees, to cut the brush? Like, how much time are you spending doing that?
That's depending on the complaints and, you know, like, we'll have a set schedule. Okay, we gotta do the bus routes. So I would say, you know, daily, probably 4 hours, you know.
One person, 4
Three
hours?
guys, 2 or 3 guys.
That's what you're now doing.
guys.
Two
Two or
That's what
three guys?
we will be doing.
What do you do now, would you estimate, on an ongoing basis?
About the same. In the winter, obviously, we don't do anything, but like in summer, spring, summer, and fall.
So you don't see more labor, more DPW labor being needed, it just does it way more efficiently, so you could do more of it?
It would be less people that I have to commit to do that job. And, you know, like I said, you know, you don't know what you run into there. I've had guys with just like out of work for weeks with poison ivy all over them. I have a couple guys that, new guy that carries an EpiPen, so he gets stung, you know. I just think it would pay for itself in a short amount of time. It'd be worth the
Part of
investment.
the capital notes on this here.
And what's the
So free cash, they want to use free cash, 160.
So this goes in the capital plan? So is FinCom taking a position on this one?
We haven't taken a position, no.
Okay.
We want to hear more information as
Oh,
well.
so this is fairly new.
Yes.
This is
Well,
our
it's
joint
been-
meeting we've asked to hear more. They want to hear more too.
Right, but it's also FinCom, they recommend capital items, so I would assume that this has been through that process, or some of these items have been through that process.
Well, I think what Jim explained was that there was a truck that he's swapping out because he can't get the truck, so he would like, I think, to put this in instead.
Correct.
So, so that's why that hasn't been heard yet, exactly.
The
The truck,
truck
as I recall, was agreed to and approved last year, but now if he can't,
We did get one truck.
we got one truck, okay.
Peterbilt with a 6-wheel cab chassis, dump body, sander, and combination, that costs $236. So anything above and beyond that, the next vehicle we get will be that or more. You know, because of the park constrictions, I don't know if there's gonna be an exemption for municipals, as far as the emissions go. They're still working on that. So, I don't see us even getting a request for a truck for a couple of years. We've had 2 that were down. One is still down because that was the one I was replacing for the follow-up truck, but we can't get it, so that's why I toned down the cash a little bit, and we've got a more important piece of equipment that we can use, 12, 15 weeks out of the year and make that money back, that way.
Okay.
And these are available, I take it?
Pardon me?
They're available.
They are
You can
available,
get them,
yes.
yeah. Yeah.
So I got a quote actually for 153, but that was a few months back, so, that's why I put it for 160. Hopefully that will cover any increased costs. I hope.
Well, if we're using free cash and it's not a standalone warrant article, it doesn't matter, right? We don't need
What
to
do you
get more authorization if it's more, we just.
I mean, do you have any questions for me?
Some of these are separate.
What volume of complaints would you estimate you got
Excluded that, right?
over the course of the season?
Over the course of the season, we probably get,
That's
So this is a
100 or more. Just a resident calling, hey, I can't see out of, Mill Cove when I come out, I can't see around the corner, or I can't see this way. Or Mary O'Regan from the school will, inform me, hey, the school bus is having trouble seeing here, and I'm going and trimming that, so, those type of complaints we're right on top of right away. This would nip it in the bud, because we'd be able to trim everything 8 inches off the deck and just keep going. We don't have to be so precise as Glenn is. Glenn's a very good operator, but he goes low and rides over rocks and everything. This we can just set at 8 inches, 12 inches, go and then mow it again if we need to a month later, so it's definitely gonna pay for itself.
Okay. Any other FinCom questions here? Jim?
We have a sort of process question. Generally, where's the cutoff where we start considering excluded debt? Like the dollar value, where you stop thinking it's a free cash and maybe it should be its own warrant article, a debt article.
So you have to borrow, so that would be the trigger.
You have to, what does have to mean?
So if you included it in your borrowing package, you could.
I understand, but where's on a unit item, like how much is the fire truck, like 700 or something?
Total, 1.3 million.
Okay, so where's the cutoff? Like, what's the smallest thing we would try to put as a debt item, like separate out? We've got coils in there for 700,000, for example. Amenities is its own thing, so I get that. The coils are their own thing, they're debt, right?
It would have to be, yeah.
Right, so 700, do you go lower than 700? Do you go 500? Do you go 160? I mean, where's the cutoff?
The lowest thing we've talked about in capital planning is the dispatch radios, but they would be lumped with other things, but it was 350,000.
It would seem to me that it should be based more on useful lifetime than on the number necessarily, because if it's going to be something that's going to be used for a long time, you don't want today's taxpayers to pay for it necessarily. You want to have all the taxpayers who are going to be using paying for it, so I would say.
All right, so you got a 20-year mower, should that be a debt then? In your theory, that should be debt.
Yeah, yeah.
160K.
Okay,
Yeah,
that's a theory, we're not doing
I mean,
that.
it's a thing, but, you're.
I'm not debating, I mean, it's a good idea, but it's not the way they're doing it.
majority of things probably have a long lifespan.
Well, not everything, a truck doesn't.
We use trucks.
Police cars don't.
Police cars don't.
Some police cars don't.
And the computers don't, and what else is,
That's true, that's true.
There's a whole bunch of junk that's on there, they don't have long lifetimes.
All right, that's
And-
fair.
Well, and I'm asking a question on the agenda, there's review of financial warrant articles, of which Department of Public Works mower is listed as a financial warrant article. So some of these are warrant articles, some of these are capital items that would go under the capital items. That's my confusion.
It was confusing, I'm sorry. We lumped everything together.
Okay.
Just as an agenda, because we wanted, now, I haven't established a process for this, but I figured we could go through all these, just get more
I think that'd be
information.
great,
And then,
yeah.
so, thank you, Jim, unless there are other
Yeah, appreciate it.
questions.
Thank you, Jim.
All right.
Yeah.
So then, moving on, well, it looks like the Council on Aging and Human Services SUV is no longer.
It's off.
All right. We're saving money.
Delaying
For now.
money.
Delaying,
Delaying, yeah.
right. So I guess one of the biggest ones we can talk about is there are a lot of big ones. Facilities. So Jerry.
Yes, John.
Where would you like me to start?
Why don't you amble up and,
I think they can hear you.
They can hear him.
You don't want to go back
Yeah.
there?
Yeah.
Or you can move the mic back to the, yeah.
Very soft-spoken as well as an ambler.
Let's see, Robin Sartio.
Cowboy Jerry. Elevators, start there. There are 3 elevators that this covers. There are one in Town Hall, one in the library, and one in the school. All 3 of them are past their useful lifetime. Getting replacement parts for them is difficult, perhaps impossible. If we put off replacing them, at some point they may fail catastrophically and those buildings will be without an elevator. Our consultants that looked at the elevators have come to the conclusion that they need to be replaced, and the estimated cost is that amount that's on the warrant article. The fan coil units, there are 43 or so fan coil units in the library. Most of them are located in the little grill boxes by windows, and they blow out hot air in the winter and cold air in the summer. Some of them are original equipment. They are not very efficient. They're not easily controlled. They're controlled by a little thermostat that's built into the fan coil unit rather than being controlled by the building management computer that's going to be installed. Replacing those will make the library's heating much more efficient and much more controllable. Doing it in conjunction with the library renovation project, since it may involve tearing up walls and running wires and pipes and things, doing it in conjunction with the library renovation makes a lot of sense. And for that reason, putting it off doesn't make sense. What else should I talk about?
Town hall doors and windows?
Town hall doors and windows.
That's the same.
When we did a study of Town Hall, there are several parts of the building envelope, the windows, doors, and some siding things that are in need of replacing. Is that something we could put off? Yeah, we probably could. It's not something that we want to put off for very long, because if we don't take care of the building, bad things will happen. If we had to put off something for a year, that's the one thing.
Which one, which are the Robins?
No, here, doors and
Here.
windows
Town
here.
hall
Yeah.
windows and doors.
If we had to put off something, that's the one thing that is kind of least time sensitive. If one window failed, we probably could just replace that one window. The doors, some of them are not particularly energy efficient. Replacing them would have some payback in terms of energy savings.
And it would cost more to sort of break it into chunks.
Well, it is actually broken into chunks. That amount is just for part of the total cost.
Oh, okay.
So there are other,
chunk.
I
can show it.
Other chunks of it come
Of the
out.
150,000, you mean, that's in there,
Yeah.
there's more of that
Yes.
to come.
In following years. So,
I see.
So postponing it would just shift all of those
Sorry, you
out.
asked.
It's important to see our long-term. We've got a lot, and that's what we've really tried to do, is put all these capital needs on a budget and, or on a
Mhm.
plan, and see what we have going out.
Well, that chart is only 26. That's not the time phase chart. Oh, no, it is.
That goes to 30. So this is
Here it
the
is, 52.
town hall chunk right here.
Okay. But really, that's the biggest chunk. It's a 2-year chunk, so it's.
The biggest chunk is the roof and the RTU.
Right.
Ah,
Oh, well, yeah, well, there's elevators.
Well, you can't count.
1/3 of the
is 3
elevators.
That's not really.
Yeah,
Jerry,
roof and RTU.
doing
500.
3 elevators made sense at once,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because of the cost saving, or is there?
Plus, we can replace them with similar pieces so the parts are interchangeable and they'll be on the same maintenance.
They're all be the same type of elevator, you mean?
Well, the library elevator is slightly different because it opens front and back. But the town hall library and the school library will be pretty much identical.
Okay.
There's no economy of scale to do all the windows together, or?
Only to the sense that the longer we put things off, the more expensive they are.
Yeah.
And Jerry, when you say they need replacing, what does that mean? What's going on with them now? I heard what you said about the doors not being very
Some-
energy efficient, but
Well, the windows are not
similar?
energy efficient. Some of them don't open, and they should. Others don't open because they've been sealed shut. The outer casing on the windows is not in great shape. And part of that, if you look at the building, there's some siding pieces that should get replaced as well. So it's in general the building envelope.
So the Robbins RTU at the school, in the Robbins building, the RTU unit needs to be replaced. Hopefully there would be rebates or something there, but this is the projected cost.
Because it's dying, or what?
End of life, right?
Was it exhibiting end-of-life things, like not working?
The Robin, yeah, that's the.
Is that on here? Oh, we're not looking at it now.
That's the only unit that wasn't replaced when we.
That's
Oh,
right.
there it is, under articles, got it.
It's up here, but I consolidated them for MFC.
Yeah, yeah.
And then so the facilities parking lot comes directly from the facilities director, so it is in bad shape. If you saw it this time of year, it's a mud pit. It could be
You're
paved.
talking about parking lot
Where's that?
where the shed?
DPW?
Where the shed is?
No,
where the-
at the school.
Where the facilities
Oh, at the
entrance is.
school.
Oh, at the school.
Okay, gotcha.
Got it.
So this could be put off. It could also be rolled into the annual paving plan.
Yeah.
It would cut away from other paving, but 30,000 isn't a huge chunk.
Too bad, yeah, I like that.
It's not a bad
On
idea.
the back?
I would take out those middle two, there's your 200K, almost.
So then the other thing on
On the chainsaw in the car. Let me bring it in.
these MFC requests is they have enough funding in their current warrant article to pay for all of this, so this can come off the,
I'm sorry, which one is that?
so the one that we approved last year.
Okay, oh, I see, yeah, yeah.
So that was supposed to pay for the library coils, which you see the price was way off. And the elevators, which
Which was way off.
became a study and was way off.
That was what, like 200 grand, I think,
Yeah.
back in the day?
Yeah.
I
Three
think
of them.
that's even past the category of wishful thinking.
So the good news for FY '26 is this 380 can come off the plan, assuming that everybody agrees to that. But these other items would need to be funded.
Got it.
And it would be deferred, so it's a good news for FY
But
'26.
if you don't spend all the 380, does more, you have some credit for the following year as well?
Yes, the warrant article is less for 3 years,
And this is year 2 of 3 or year 1 of 3?
2 of 3.
2 of 3.
Okay.
So this one has already been raised, so this has an impact on the next year's tax increase.
It can only be applied to things that are under the MFC purview?
Yes.
Yes.
And we wrote it as such, so it can cover any deferred maintenance of facilities.
But you can't use it for partial payment of the debt things, or you could?
I mean, you could use it for a down payment.
Okay. So you could use it up without necessarily spending on those items.
So that's why I'm saying it's not like a net positive. It's, you're deferring the things to other funding mechanisms,
In
but
the
it helps
long
the
run,
free
it's-
cash situation.
Yeah, which is good, to help the free cash.
But we didn't want to do that without people discussing and saying that that was the
Yeah,
right move.
It's good, no, it's
Right.
good.
So, how much actually is left in your MFC, in the MFC article? I mean, after you spend the 380, but there's still a balance
Yes,
of approximately?
200-something thousand.
So,
So I'm just wondering if that's the case, why we don't just do all the town windows and doors, town hall windows and doors, since that's another additional
Well,
100,000.
if nothing else comes up, then we certainly could do that.
I got a different way of looking at it. Not do the windows and doors, and take that 150 and take your 250 and apply 400 to the library calls or something else. So you have a little more debt room for all the other stuff you got to
I see, okay, that's.
Because if you look at the total, if you go down to your time phase chart, you know, this is a big year for, it's, I think, the next one, well, I don't know what it is in there.
The capital plan?
In the thing you sent us, the
debt
PDF,
limit charge.
next thing down.
How it affects every year.
Yeah,
Oh, the debt, I'm sorry.
yeah.
Come on, brain.
While he's doing that, do we know for sure CPA funds can be used for the amenities building?
Yes.
Okay, good. That's a good answer. Okay.
Really,
We can talk about that next.
Opening there.
That's the next-
Just on the, before we move on from the.
Well, all I'm saying is that you could help your gap here, right, if you did it that way. You borrow less for the coils. You just borrow less.
Yeah,
Well, also, keep in mind that all of these are estimates based on consultants' judgment of what things cost when they looked at it. When it actually goes out to bid, it's doubtful it's gonna be less.
Right, but that's, are you making the case that we need to do sooner rather than later, or?
Well, I'm making the case
that it
that
might be
it's
more.
good to have a little extra money to cover. if-
Well, we could do that anyway. I mean, that advice is good advice regardless of how we apply the money we
Yeah.
do apply, right? I'm just saying, we can't do everything, and just because you have 380 or 600 or, it doesn't mean it's gotta be spent this year, or it has to be spent in that way. So we're very conscious of easing up on this borrowing part of the equation.
All right, so I'm gonna add that in.
And is any, for the Robbins RTU, I know the Wilkins HVAC, we got a sizable rebate on that project. I'm guessing there's similar rebates still available. Is anyone from the town or from the school looking at that, looking at the timing of that to ensure we're not timing out on a potential rebate, or, I just know there's some sizable.
Sarah is on top of most of that.
Yeah.
Okay,
We just don't like to count it before
right.
we know what system and.
But you may be able to do that project, commit the funds, do the project, get the rebate, you know.
That shows up another year, right?
It would be the free cash.
Yeah.
So
Free
some of our
cash.
free
Free
cash this
cash.
year is
The
free.
rebate goes to free cash, so you end up getting, with.
Yep.
okay. So, are we done with MFC?
Yeah, yeah. We can move on to the school departments, the amenities building at CCHS.
Can I amble on back?
Thank you, Jerry.
You're gonna have to kick Mark out of his seat again, though.
Amenities, that's a good word for bathroom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And I know Brian
I think of it more as like a
is on
snack.
the call.
okay, wonderful. Brian,
I guess there might be.
welcome. Brian Watterson's on.
Good evening. Happy to help answer any questions along with Barney. I know she's heard a lot about this in the last few weeks.
Sure. Well, we had questions just because we weren't as familiar with it, so maybe you could tell us a little bit about, you know, the project.
Yep, so as someone just alluded to, amenities building is essentially just a fancy word for a toilet building. And especially, you know, the reason why the RSC feels that this is so important is for the ability to finally have accessible toilets near the field. So this was something that was part of the campus completion plan back when the school was built in 2015. Unfortunately, there just weren't funds available since that time. So the decades since, there's been 3 outhouses located near the football field, the lower field, And one of them, while it is a handicap outhouse, it's just not meeting the needs of the community. And we've heard, many, rather sad stories, whether it's people just not making it in time or having to be carried in, and it just means that these bathrooms are not accessible to everybody. Besides the bathrooms, the other things that would be added in is a small concession area. This is not very glamorous. This would just be shelves, a sink, outlets, a window, with a counter where different groups could sell food and drinks for different events. And then there would be some storage space as well. This building would be available basically spring, summer, and fall. There's not going to be heat or air conditioning, and it would have to be winterized. And it's going to be available not just, of course, for CC sports events, but it would be available for community recreation events, the Muddy Moose, Kicks for Cancer, graduation, all the different things that happen on campus. And when we put in the application for CPA funds, we did put it in at the, based on the high side of the range that we've been given from Gale Associates. And later on this month, we will have a more dialed in estimate. So, the overall building was projected at 1.55 to 1.85. It's going to be somewhere in that range, and we'll know more in a couple weeks.
Hey, Brian? Brian? Can you hear us?
Yep.
How do they treat the waste? Is it septic? Does it tee into some waste disposal? What do they do with it?
Sewer.
There is a sewer there?
It would be tied into the sewer.
Okay.
Last year, was it last year that they wanted this?
Yes.
Or the year before? Yeah, again. We asked them to do a study. Did they do the study? And we asked them to pay particular attention to, creative construction types, because this has not gone down. It was 2 million then, and it's still 2 million, so I'm not honestly too pleased. And we also asked them to look at fundraising, and, I'm a little miffed that they are not even or that
So what I can
Concord
tell
didn't
you-
open CPA for them, but maybe they should have done it earlier then, or at least to see, I'm still unhappy about the ask.
Yep. So a couple things. The application, so Concord's CPC application is much earlier than Carlisle's. It closed, I believe, in September. We didn't have all the information at that point. We got the preliminary report around Thanksgiving with those ranges that I gave you. We have been in communication with Representative Cataldo's office, with State Senator Barrett's office, with U.S. Rep. Lori Trahan's office about different funding that's available. Unfortunately, we have struck out in all of those outreach efforts. There were conversations with the town of Concord, because as everybody knows, Concord Rec does use the fields as well. Unfortunately, nothing materialized there. And in terms of fundraising, like I said at the start, we're talking about toilets. It's not something that we feel people are going to rally behind the same way as the other. So there are some people that I might want to, name a toilet after, but
$10,000.
the other piece on the campus completion is the track, and the track is something we do expect to handle through fundraising.
We're going to have another town meeting in the fall, and if is Concord going to open their CPC in the fall? I mean, does that help us any? Because it doesn't help us.
I don't know that Concord knows
Doesn't
if
help
they're
us
having a
necessarily.
fall meeting or not.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
I mean, I'm willing
And they could pay it.
to pay for some toilets, but I don't know. Okay.
James, do you have questions?
Brian, I don't think you fully answered Keith's question about options that were considered. So maybe you can go through, because there were a few different things that were considered and they decided upon this one.
Right,
So
yeah,
if you
that
could
would
just
be-
share just a high-level picture of that.
Yeah, so the study did come back with a few different options. One was to use basically prefab modular facilities, more of a temporary structure. These would only, while they would be cheaper, significantly cheaper, they would only have a lifespan of 10 years. And after the 10 years' time, they would have to be removed and essentially put into landfills. There's no repurposing them. So the school committee ruled that out just because 10 years is going to go by very quickly. I mean, my youngest is in kindergarten. Those toilets would be, past their lifespan before she graduates the CCHS. We did look at other modular options, and they were actually more expensive. And then it was really between the cinder block option that we're leaning towards or a wood frame construction. And we went with the CMU, the cinder block, because it's has less annual maintenance or, over the 50 years that this building will be around, we're not going to have to do, painting or as much exterior work. So, the school committee carefully looked at the different options that were presented, and CMU, between the lifespan and the cost of the options, seemed like it was the smart choice for both communities.
Brian, remind me that discussion came up last year about renting one of those trailers that you pay annually for someone to maintain it and such. I think we asked that when you came out. Why was that ruled out?
Bob Connery had the reason, Bob Connery being the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations for the region, had that answer. I believe it was actually a cost scenario, just to be able to have them. And also, I don't know that you could have them in place for the same amount of time. I can confirm that answer with him and send it back to both chairs, but I believe it was a cost and just the amount of time that they would be on campus.
Any other questions, thoughts? No?
Well, I would remind us that it doesn't matter how Concord decides to pay for their share, but we've determined, you're saying, that it is CPA eligible, and we are sitting on around $4 million in the CPA bucket. So if we were managed through some other suboptimal solution to save in our share, only our share, 100,000, we're paying for it with something where we're underutilizing the anyway. So a lot of work is, I don't know, but a lot of work's going into an analysis of what would be the thing, like, okay, to me, it's less, I know money's money, but it's not the same color of money as our hard-earned free cash. That's all I want to say.
Yeah, okay. Well,
I'll quote you on that
And I
another
just want to
time.
say, just for the benefit of everyone, on the Concord side, the warrant article is going to be for the town to borrow, not the district, not the regional school district, but the town to borrow.
Okay.
And their share is, based on the current assessment, it's 1.4 million. So Bob Connery and I spent a lot of time making sure we got that warrant language right, so that it's the town of Concord, and Concord is paying, paying back the debt there.
And we go first.
Yep. Great. And we go first.
Yep. Okay, well, Brian, thank you. This has
Thank you,
been
Brian.
really
Thank you,
helpful
Brian.
to understand it better. So
My
we're
pleasure.
moving on to public safety. The select board, I know, had some questions on the computer-aided dispatch and the police drone.
Okay,
Okay,
I'm speaking for the chiefs for these projects,
okay.
and comfortable doing it after the conversations we've had. So the fire chief, the master box system, which is a $65,000 ask on the FY26 capital plan, he says it's working fine. It is outdated with no parts available. it should be on the list, but it does not have to be a this year thing. So it will need to be replaced. It does need to be placed somewhere. If it went, it would be a problem, but right now it's working.
Okay.
That's how much again?
65,000. For the CAD system, he essentially deferred to the police chief, which I'll get to. Putting on his emergency manager hat, because some of these things are cross-purpose. He mentioned that signboards are available at NERAC, so that is something we can borrow to use. We wouldn't have the same capacity, so it's very similar to what Jim was talking about. So we could use it in a limited way, or we could have our own and have that.
These are electric signs that say like road closure at
You just pull it up.
250th. Yeah, right.
A lot of speed
So
enforcement.
how many of these would, I don't see it on the list here. Oh, there it is. How many did you get for 25K?
25K, yep. The,
How many do you get for
Oh, one.
25K?
one good one.
And did you find out what our rental cost is now? How much we spend per year to rent?
Zero.
We don't, because we borrow them.
You borrow them from.
Oh, it's just borrowing, yeah.
Okay, so he, as an emergency manager, if you were talking about the police ask, would prioritize the drone because of
Really?
because of his emergency management capabilities, especially if it has infrared technology. So one of our biggest vulnerabilities in Carlisle is fire and missing persons in our forest.
Do we have drone operators on staff?
What we
We
do
just
now,
hired
we just
one.
hired one.
That new
Today.
police officer,
We
yeah.
were trained.
A lot of
Interesting,
teenage
huh?
boys in town that can
And what's,
fly.
is the cost that's
It's not easy, actually. Big
shown,
drones.
does that include one that's got the infrared capability?
Yes.
That's why it's so expensive. It's a pretty expensive one.
Again, just
Yeah.
for the public and for everyone, it's not your Walmart drone. It's
No.
things like an airplane. It's a big.
Yeah.
Do we have a
neighboring
landing
towns
strip?
have-
No, I'm serious, like,
Yeah,
we
how
could-
do you, where does it live?
We would land in a field.
Yeah.
Like
Honest
small
question
thing.
here, like, in terms of neighboring towns, do they have drones? Is there any provision where we could mutual aid of drone? I mean, it seems like the type of thing we would,
Maybe
it's
we could
important to
rent it
have,
out.
but we would use,
Like the
we
dog.
wouldn't be using on a regular basis. So is there any opportunity to leverage
Yeah.
the drone network that may exist around us?
That's a good question. We would also have the capacity to assist others with our drone as
Yep.
well.
Right, in other words, can you charge them back?
Of
for
the
that is
area, we would
question.
use it more, given our,
I want to remind people, and I don't know what the insurance is, but, I mean, we build drones in my company. Those big drones are not easy to fly, and they crash a lot. So, I mean, it's not like you're going to borrow the car. It's a much higher risk endeavor when you're flying that drone,
Yeah.
especially in the conditions that they're going to be doing. So if we do it, we need to understand the insurance world of it and the replacement of it, because it will crash and it will need repair. I guarantee you that.
it's a big hit to our insurance to have a drone, for those reasons.
And that's why
So
other
that's not
towns are
in
not
this
necessarily
cost.
going to
Gonna
give you the
spend the
keys to the
money,
drone.
yeah. And how much is, what's in the budget for it?
The drone,
16.7.
yeah.
16.7?
Yeah, but that's,
I mean, they're
that's
not
not putting
wildly
it then
expensive.
obviously into the operating budget. That's just for buying it. And What
Right.
he's saying, what
Right,
David is
you have
pointing
to
out. is
increase
that we will have
insurance and then
unlike some
operator
other things that
training. Yeah,
would, are cost saving or payback.
Right.
This does, neither pays itself back nor, there are further expenses that we have to be cognizant of.
And you'll see in the memo from the chief, which was in the packet, the payoff is the capabilities too. So I just don't want to ignore the capabilities that it would add to our department.
Yeah.
For some of our largest public safety vulnerabilities, as mentioned by the emergency manager as well. So I asked the police chief to prioritize the 3 police requests that you asked for and to number the severity if it wasn't, the impact on his operations if it wasn't funded. So the CAD system, he said, is absolutely number 1. If we don't replace it, it's a vulnerability of 9 to 10 on a scale of 10. For the drone, second, and the severity level was 5, and for the signboard, 3rd and 3. And then his memo details, I think, pretty well his case for including him. He does have a strong case. It's just whether or not it fits into the town's priorities.
I have to say, the signboard is a new item that I haven't seen before on that list also, so that's one kind of for me, a strike against it, because I don't like pop-up items. And, you know, we've started a couple of years ago already, or at least a year ago, asking people for 5-year plan. So I'm wondering if that couldn't just be put off at least a year, not a couple. And it's not like they're not available for free.
We would need signboards in April, if any time.
Yeah, and he does reference renting it for thousands of dollars, but is there some reason we would, I mean, I know it for the 250th, that's a very specific event, but generally, do we know that the borrowing from, forgot what they're called, NERAC is what he put up there, but
Whatever.
is that,
So for general day-to-day as possible, I do know when we went to borrow for the 250th for our stuff, they didn't have any.
right, well, that makes sense, because everybody's
So
borrowing.
when you would want to use it, you're likely not to get one, except for the day-to-day stuff that the chief wants to do, too, which is speed enforcement and community messaging.
Right.
So we through our list?
We are through our list unless there's anything
Well,
else.
did we talk about the mosquito spraying, or is
No, we
that
didn't.
in a different area? The mosquito
there-
study?
Warrant articles.
From our agenda talks, they're coming next meeting, so we're going to talk
We're
about
gonna
that.
wait till then.
Same with the the CTF.
But that's a good point.
cemetery,
They're
okay.
asking for money, we have to, where's that money in your summary?
Well, it's not a capital item.
It's a
So does
warrant?
warrant articles.
Okay.
They're
Which
warrant
means it's
articles.
paid for how, though?
Free cash.
So it's still free cash.
You've got to put it in
Yeah.
there.
So in your summary, didn't you have a free cash summary somewhere?
Yep.
Is it in that?
It's right here.
All right, there you go. So that's great shot right there. So what you're saying, I mean, what FinCom maybe is saying is, we're sitting on $1.8 million of free cash over our 12% self-imposed limit, right? Which includes stabilization. But, so this is the extra cash if we want to stay at 12%.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So we would need to cut 112.
So you have now. so
113.
You're to the good now, 112.
Oh, we're to the,
No, we're not to the good of 112.
You are.
Oh, we
because
are?
The MFC items came out.
Oh, but before we were minus 113 or something.
oh, okay.
Same amount.
So now
All
we're
right.
okay.
So we're to the good. All right.
And that,
But
what
we could even
changed
to
to
be,
make
we
this
could
one?
be
Sorry.
even to the
MFC
better
stuff
if
was
we
pre-approved.
cut some other things.
Because they already have the
Oh, so it
money.
came out of the cash, I get you.
Yeah.
And the 200, you guys feel, is more or less in the range of our annual, I mean, Victor will remember, and Jerry perhaps, thou shalt not use free cash to patch up operating holes, right? So you're okay with that, like 200-ish as a, Band-Aid, basically?
It would take us from whatever it was, 4.5 up to like a 5.25, I think, or so, if we didn't apply the 200.
Well, that's a different way of looking at it. I'm simply saying, as a matter of past practice, and with the budgets grow, so the numbers grow, 200 is a reasonable number. Thornton Ash used to say peanut butter it, right?
Yeah.
In other words, you're pasting over.
I'd look at it as that, we're getting this really significant initial hit from sped out of district commissions this year.
Okay.
And there's the year lag for circuit breaker.
Yeah.
So I would mentally kind of file it into like
Okay.
smoothing that bump.
That's
And then
fine.
The school's
For
pulling,
next year.
Yeah.
you
the
mean?
school's pulling some levers on their own through their fee program to do some other things, but in particular, that's like a 200 and,
Really, okay.
They're applying more than we are. Yeah.
that is,
All right.
so I kind of mentally would.
So you're
put it
you're there too?
That's,
200.
yeah.
Okay, good. And warrant articles, I mean, none of them seem excessive in their dollar value, right? I'm not opining on their worthiness. Can you go down
Could
just
you
a
just,
little?
yeah, just.
Yeah, what are
Make
the
sure we
warrant
get the
articles?
full- yeah, right.
Mosquito?
So, I mean, it's not big money, I guess, when, again, we'll deal with each one, but in and of themselves, that's not a huge amount of money compared with the other things. And then the capital plan is now netting out the MFC stuff. So, okay, sounds okay to me.
My one warning
Yep.
is this problem.
You mean FY '27?
FY '27, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
So
that's
these,
right.
and 28. So this is over reserve, what you would need to pay.
Right.
But if you put your 112 to the good,
Right.
to a stabilization fund, that will help that.
Right, but the way you are using increasing revenue and decreasing free cash generation, you will not have the free cash to spend 1.3 million next year to cover that $1.9 million delta. And then it's worse in FY '28.
So, couple questions. Kate mentioned capital stabilization. We put in, I saw in that financial audit, we put in 300 into the cap stabilization. And what's the lockbox rules of that, to tap that?
You have to use it for capital.
But does it need a town meeting vote, or we?
2/3 town meeting vote, yep.
So, have we created a problem? In other words, not this year, go to next year, we decide we want to break that in case of emergency break glass. We want to go pull that 300 out and apply it to this. We can't actually plan that because we have to vote it at the same time we're committing. Like, have we created a problem for ourselves by doing it that way?
I mean, I think if you can't get a 2/3 vote, then.
No,
the
but
town's
you have to
gonna
get the
be clear.
2/3 vote coincident with the approval of these articles. It makes it harder to plan because you're not really sure, right?
Right.
Whereas if you just kept it in free cash, we don't trust ourselves, like, just to hold the free cash. I mean, I think that's a little bit of, so I'm thinking about, like, next year, and let's say we even do what Kate's saying, put the next 100,000 in, so now it's 400,000 that we've sort of locked away. What's the sequence? And then we're at next year and we decide we need that money. How do we have this meeting next year with needing that?
You're asking me, so.
Yeah, no shit.
Politely.
He wasn't asking me.
Yeah.
When we talk about capital in the fall,
Yeah.
it makes, the recommendations for stabilization make sense, because you want to smooth these bumps. When you need to use it in the spring, so you like to lock it away in the fall, but you want to unlock it in the spring.
Right.
So I think you just need a reasonable plan that you can sell,
Okay.
and if the town says no, they say no.
Meaning, but we're gonna have a list of things we recommend spending money on. Separately, we're gonna have the article to say, can we liberate the lockbox? If the spending passes and the lockbox doesn't, what do we do?
Then you raise the taxes and people pay a lot more in the taxes that year. So I think there's an incentive for people to vote for it.
Yeah, no, but it is sort of kludgy.
And they're
Are we-
associated, right?
Either that, or they
Isn't the
say, no,
rainy
we
day
don't
coming
want
in
you
like a
to.
year? Like,
build
why
this.
create these things to put
I know.
money day
I
for
don't know
rainy
why.
day when we
Could we-
know it's gonna
Could
start
we-
raining in
Yeah, why
fiscal
couldn't we,
27?
like, in the fall?
Shouldn't we just
like,
keep maximum
liberate it?
flexibility?
Yeah, this what I think.
This isn't 6 years down the
No,
road.
it's
This is
2 years of-
This is now,
So
basically.
he's saying, why create the lockbox for, like, next year?
Right.
Like, could we, it's too late in the spring, but could we in the fall, knowing maybe more about the capital
Yeah, we
coming
could do
up,
something there.
could we have an article in the fall town meeting to free it up so that we can do capital planning for the spring?
Good.
Okay, so anyway, that's side show, but, all right. So what you're saying, Ryan, is on columns I and J, basically, we're facing 4-point-something million, like north of 4 million, of which you expect we'll have free cash of how much over that 2-year period?
If you made me guess right now, I'd say you're gonna generate, so if you remember the financial statements, you generated 8 and 8 for 1.6. I think 5 and 5 is more realistic.
So 1 million of the 4.
So 1 million as applied to 1.9 and 2.3 without warrant articles.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at the balance that presumably is the free cash cap, which means you've made a decision, at least in this notional one, that there's a debt article in 27 of 1,000,001, but no debt article in 28.
And I don't know if we're gonna have that discipline, because we've got, going forward,
That's why
we've
you
got all
have a
these new capital
stabilization
things
fund.
coming. We've kind of talking about DPW, potentially
No, I know,
Highland,
I know.
whatever else
Right.
comes in our.
So, right, so that's great. So to fold it back to this year, do we want to just not spend on some things, just to kind of keep?
Don't let phones in, because they get racist sometimes.
What's happening?
Are there any other, are you good? Are there any other comments, questions on this from the boards? I might even ask if there's anyone in the public or on that has a question, just because we've got all these boards and a lot of people in the room to talk about this. Is there any other thoughts?
Do you guys feel like you have enough direction from us? Do you have questions for us?
When we were in the whole 150-ish thousand, then there was gonna be a policy question about applying the 200,000 to operating versus capital, right? That was kind of the main takeaway that we wanted to get from the select board. Now that we're in the positive for the capital, I think it seems like both committees are pretty comfortable applying that 200,000 to the free cash. That was the main direction we were looking for tonight, and it's not as much of an issue now, so.
Right. But that's, and I agree with that, what you said. But I believe the big, we need to pay attention to the looming 2 years, and therefore,
Yeah.
so say you got that 200, here you go, operating budget, okay, fine, 3-point-something%, everybody, we live to fight another year, great. Now we go over to the capital side. Do we haircut the request list, knowing that there's just more and more stuff coming? Like,
Right.
should we be, like, if you don't have money, you don't spend, right? That's like household finance, right?
And we had discussions internally about not applying that 200,000, keep as almost a prepayment into free cash for future years, having tax rates go up 4 or so %, right? And we landed on applying it. To Scott's point, there were some
Again,
one-offs
I
and
think
such.
I'm
so-
comfortable with what you did.
Yeah,
I'm now at the other side of the equation, which is we're still, we do all these things we want to do, and we still have 100,000, so that's great. But it's above a floor. I mean, it's sort of a self-imposed floor, but it's still a floor. So that's not enough if he says we are only going to have 1 million out of the 4 million needs over the next 2 years.
right.
So that's my question, is back to the capital list. Are there things you think we should move to the right, just to kind of be conservative? That's-
Move to the right to skip over the next 2 years to the
Well, I
third
don't
year.
know that, but I mean.
That's the challenge, right? I mean, you've got
Yeah,
to
he
kick
took
it
the
pretty
whole-
far
right.
down.
I know, but I mean, you heard maybe windows can wait and, I don't know,
Right.
signboards can wait. I just don't know.
We haven't taken a position on any of the
Okay.
capital yet. We've flushed out with some of our marathon meetings and such, so we'll take that away to discuss.
And I would say there's no, if you're looking at, let's push it to a year or two, like, that doesn't help,
You gotta
right?
kick it 3 or 4 years.
Well, you have to move the whole pile. I mean,
Yeah.
if you go down,
And things are going to show up in 3 years.
of course they will, but at the moment, there's a precipitous
But if they
drop.
just showed up this year,
Yeah.
my vote is you can push it at least a year, if not 3.
Right.
Because many of those things that we've been needing for a long time
I mean-
have been on the list for a long time.
And
I
they're
don't-
legitimate asks,
and-
for sure.
Well, like the
You know,
push it
road
there.
noise, say.
People have to plan more forward, and if they don't,
Couple of years,
they don't get
yeah.
it necessarily, unless it's really something critical.
At our last meeting, we discussed how if a new ask suddenly shows up, right, the kind of strict eye that we would have on it, and not just an automatic, yeah, sure, add it to the list
Yeah.
approach.
Right.
Is this all chapter?
It can't be just added to the head of the list, it has to be added
half of
into
it.
the queue.
That's-
Right,
Yeah, the-
and
half is
historically,
Yeah.
the finance committees prioritize
Think it's on
public
here.
safety things and
Yeah,
so
yeah,
forth,
I,
so.
I get it, but.
Yeah.
So he's not.
Agreed, we're on a
Also,
similar
What it is
page.
he adds it all up,
Yeah, okay.
and then he says this is how you.
Anything else from the finance committee, or the select board?
Thank you for.
I have two that still
Never mind.
need discussion. The COLA question,
Oh,
I know you need direction for that. And the second piece is, it doesn't have to be decided tonight, but excluded debt versus non-excluded debt. And the main reason for that is because it requires ballots. So you could have a scenario where you have 4 ballot questions if you exclude all of these projects.
And the excluded debt right now is coils, elevators,
The fire station renovation,
yep,
that's it, just 3.
so 3.
Is that 3 different votes, or each
3
thing is
different
its own?
votes at the ballot. And
Elevators or elevators?
elevator.
If you exclude the debt, you have to vote it, yep. If you don't exclude it, you don't.
But if you don't exclude it, you have to, how do you?
Well, it counts towards your levy, you
It counts-
borrow it.
yeah, you borrow it,
You don't-
which-
it counts-
But it goes to the tax increase.
Yes.
Fire station and.
You you're just, but you're not,
I guess the question is, how does it affect the
it's just not
levy
part of
limit?
your, it's not counting part of the levy
Exclude it
calculation.
as opposed to
It's
not
still
exclude.
that.
No, I know, but the tax bill,
No difference. It's the levy capacity.
Fire
does it
coil
change
shelter.
the tax?
I don't think so.
That's what I meant. Let me, not the one.
Count toward your
Yeah.
levy.
So you can't exceed 2.5 if you don't exclude the debt. The debt would still be paid for through the operating budget. It really wouldn't have a tax impact, but it will impact your excess levy capacity.
Right,
Yes.
which
Future
you show is going
Yeah, what's the,
down a little bit, right?
if we exclude those items, the levy limit, our excess levy capacity stays generally the same, correct?
Mhm.
If we were to not exclude that debt, it would shrink. And
It would not shrink. It would only shrink if you spent over what we're saying. So the two projects, the elevator and the coils fit into that. That's why I showed you that debt chart. So they fit into the debt chart. It's future debt that's going to
I see.
eat into your levy capacity. So it's
So-
not an FY26 problem, which is why I was hesitant to bring it up in this section, but.
But the buildings will have to be excluded debt.
Yeah, you would, you definitely do.
Yeah, otherwise you could just have
So,
the departments combined.
I mean, I don't think we should exclude debt unless there's if we have a strategic reason where we can maintain the debt level, I think that's fine. We don't, the key is preserving our excess levy capacity and not getting to an override situation. So I don't think that means you put everything into excluded debt. I don't think that's the correct.
No, but
advice.
the 1.7 million of the two projects, if you don't exclude it, aren't you eating into your
But he
levy
was just
capacity?
saying no, because
No.
that keeps our debt at our current level.
If you can fit it in your operating budget, it doesn't. It's when, like the building, you can't. So you have to add it. That's when you exclude it, so you can raise.
So these would be non-excluded.
You don't have to, you can, but
Well,
you.
it's the offset. I mean, I don't 100% agree with the way Ryan's proposing it. At the end of the day, everything adds up.
Yeah.
If you exclude it, you do create more headroom in the long run against.
For excess levy capacity.
For excess levy capacity. The risk you run is you might fail at the ballot box,
Right.
and it's something you need, like library coils, like, that's not helpful.
We have enough excess levy capacity today,
Yeah.
so we shouldn't.
Right, so I
And
think
we're gonna
I
be
would-
looking to exclude
Right.
some major
So we
projects in the
shouldn't- yes,
future,
right,
so I
exactly.
wouldn't go too many
I
times to that
think we should not
well.
exclude those projects, I agree with that.
And save it for when you need.
Subject to just confirming that it doesn't deteriorate our excess levy capacity too much, but it sounds like it won't.
In FY26, it will not at all.
Okay, so I would say let's not.
But
exclude
it does go back to my point that you could, for example, not spend the town hall windows and whatever, and take that 400,000 of MFC money, put a down payment on the elevator, and borrow 600. And then you're still not excluding it, but you've actually not,
You've reduced your debt line a little
you've
bit.
reduced your debt line a little bit.
Good.
That's what I mean about trying to figure out really a rack and stack of all these things of like, where's the cut line? Like, you know, I don't feel like particularly wealthy at the moment.
No, and we're gonna have major projects coming down the pipeline, and so.
You don't take a
You don't want-
vacation when your kids are getting ready to go
We
to
don't wanna
college.
get windows today and
On the other hand,
fail at the.
you want to make sure that this doesn't become a major
That's exactly right.
project because you didn't do the windows, and now they leak and they,
Right.
and
Yep.
and you've got
Gotta
to
know
do
where
that.
the-
Lower in the
Yeah,
walls.
so,
That's the wire brushing that they do, right? And then they
well,
come back and
okay,
tell us.
so that's, yeah.
Or maybe it's just triage, you know, like my house, if there's a bad window, you place the window and you move on, like, if that's.
Or send the guys out there to caulk it up and
Yep.
just leave it.
We got to
shut.
talk about COLA.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yes,
Don't
COLA.
forget, and then, because we've got,
All right.
Yep, all right.
we're busy, so are
Packed
you,
agenda.
everybody's got stuff.
Well, I am never, ever one that wants to balance the budget on the backs of our employees. I feel that year after year they've been, and then we had to have recently we had to have a major resetting of the salaries because they fell too far behind, which is also not good business practice. So I guess I'm advocating for 2.5% for this year.
I support
And I
it.
think if Ryan, your numbers, Ryan, were that, that would be an increase of 23,000.
Those are Kelly's numbers, so I would trust them more.
Okay, all right,
Or trust them at all.
yeah.
Thanks, Scott. Appreciate that.
Yeah, I would support
Not
that
all
as
Kelly's
well.
numbers? Wait a minute.
It's not that much money, and I know we're really counting every penny, but I think it sends a really important message.
Right. I think we talked about that previously, and I think as a board, we were pretty unified on that, so that was our take on it. I don't know if FinCom had other questions, or?
No, we ran the numbers both ways, and however you support that, that's fine.
Do you need a motion?
No, I think that.
Do we have to vote on it, or no?
Their budget that they're gonna come back to us and present, and
No,
I
they're
think
looking
they've
for
heard a
guidance.
message from
Yeah,
us.
we'll
and,
plug it in, and then
they'll-
you all
They'll
approve
put it in or not, and then justify why they did or not.
Mhm.
Is there anything else that, because this doesn't happen every day,
No, it does not.
so.
Maybe
do
you
want-
could, though.
Ryan, did you want to bring up the
Good.
demand letter thing? The demand dollar thing at this, or is that
Oh,
a separate
yes.
thing?
Sent everybody Sandy's analysis of
Oh.
demand. So demand
Yeah.
is when someone does not pay their taxes timely, they get a fee. Right now, that fee's $5, and it hasn't increased since I was in high school, I think, so, here. So do you want to consider it? You have put it on the warrant for discussion, and then, do you want to talk about a recommendation for?
Sure. This wasn't discussed as a committee, so this was just on the, Ryan's finance group. So, yeah, originally it was $5 in 1987, and most neighboring towns are at 15.
Yeah.
So, or
Well, it's
20, somewhere in that
20,
range, but it can go up to 30. This is revenue, so it's nice to actually talk about money in. But I plugged it into 3 online calculators for inflation, and they all landed around 14 something from that original $5 to today. So we wanted to keep it at roughly the same proportional amount, increasing it from 5 to 15. And I meant to jot down how much that would be, but I think that's about a $15,000 increase off memory.
Really, that many people who don't pay their?
Right?
Am I wrong on that?
No, so the excise tax bills just went out, and 800 of them missed the mark, so.
Oh, it's
Whoa.
right, the excise tax bill. right.
Okay.
Yeah,
the
that's
big one.
supposedly the big one.
Out of
Not the real estate tax.
5,000, I mean, it's about 20%. It's not,
Yeah.
most
Yeah, well.
people pay on time, but it's a
I mean,
significant
I
chunk.
think we'll
Okay,
do
yeah,
that.
I'm all for the $15.
15.
15? Yep. Okay, so I think select board's on board.
I think that was it. Anything else on the FinCom for the select board?
$1 million, I think.
I'm just thinking about new revenue. Brian, what happened on the proposed transfer station sticker increase? Has that factored into these numbers at all?
No, but you're
Okay.
discussing that with them at your next meeting. And if
Okay.
they did increase it, you would see 20 to 40,000 additional revenue.
Okay.
So that would offset the local receipts increase.
Okay.
Before we go, we also have the MFC here. Is there anything else? The MFC is going to be coming before us in another month, I think, to talk about DPW, so we'll
Oh.
get, we don't need a review, I don't think, at this point. We're
And
we're
what?
getting our arms around.
Talk about DPW's recommendation replacement.
Okay.
Okay. So, well, with that, I think if you want to adjourn.
Great, we'll close our meeting, yeah.
Yep.
Could I have a motion to adjourn?
Hello?
Who was that, Nathan?
Nathan?
Can I use the same motion?
No.
Who's second? You?
Yeah.
Okay, roll call to close.
Brian? Jameis and I.
Wrong one, Scott.
You're next, Scott. Katachia, why?
Still there.
Dilly, aye.
Will and I.
Liang, aye.
Hilberg, aye.
Okay,
So we're
Okay.
closed.
Great.
thank you all.
All right.
Thank you very much,
The
yeah.
MFC has a motion to adjourn.
Second roll.
Okay, and a roll call. Bill?
So I.
Lerman, aye.
Snell, aye.
Now it's my turn, Jameis and I.
Perfect.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks for coming, Scott. It's better. Okay. Moving right along. That was helpful.
That was.
Thank you, very good.
Here.
All right. All right, so the next thing on the agenda, we wanted to talk about the TA bylaw. And as you all know, I've asked each of the select board members to go to their liaison, the committees, and get comments.
We have the scars to prove
We
it.
have the scars to prove it. We have a lot of people who have different thoughts on this. Some are wildly supportive, and some have, insightful comments. So I tried to summarize the feedback that we've heard in kind of the 5 points that were in your packet. The fifth one, I called out there, I'll talk about it. The Gleason Public Library trustees specifically are not supportive of this if they lose their autonomy. I think they could probably do a better job of articulating it. I mean, they've done a nice job of articulating it. They put a message out to us that clearly said that. And I did not, when I approached town council and took this feedback and asked town council to incorporate the feedback. I did not ask them to exclude the Gleason Public Library trustees or the public library, because I did think it was not in keeping with what the select board had talked about, but we can certainly do that because it's a select board decision, it's not my decision. And so taking this information, I'll just quickly walk through. You have both of those in your packet, and they did not highlight what changed. So I wanted to just walk you through quickly. If you are on the new draft warrant article revised 3/5/25, I would normally log on, but I'm not on the Zoom at the moment.
Could I ask you in future to please produce marked text?
Yes, and
It's very difficult to follow.
I know, and town council did not provide it, and
They should slap their wrist.
I know.
If they make an hour, they can certainly give us marked text.
Right, well, we had a couple of iterations in the process. So I'll just start with, so on the draft dated 3/5/25, the things that have really changed on there, you'll see how they've added an act relative to the town administrator of the town of Carlisle. So they've added the language that the legislature would use when it adopts this as well.
This
So
is the
that's
opening.
That's the opening preamble. That's, I guess as substantial as I need to get. But where we should start is in section 3.3.1, where it says the select board as chief executive officer of the town. So that was in response to just highlighting the fact that the select board retains its authority. That was kind of a comment that we heard that we want to make sure that the select board, and we're not giving up any authority, or not, we are giving up some authority, but we are not giving up our executive authority here. And then we have changes at the direction of the select board, that this is the change. The town administrator is not a policy-creating position and shall have the authority to create. Shall not, sorry, shall not, thank you.
We're not going to let that one slip.
No, and thank you.
Yeah, the kind of important little word there.
Right, shall not have the authority to create or set policy independent of select board approval or authorization, nor may they do so on behalf of other town officials or multiple member bodies. I will also refer you to the last section, or second to last section of 3.3.3, where that same kind of sentiment is added in. The town administrator shall supervise and manage the employees, operation, and staff resources of all town departments' employees, except for employees of the school department and fire department. In this supervisory and managerial capacity, the town administrator shall ensure efficient day-to-day operation of all town departments and facilities by implementing the policy directives of the select board or other town official or multiple member body as applicable.
So let me ask you, Travis,
Yes.
on those, both of those where they refer to multiple member body, that means whether appointed or elected.
Correct,
Right.
correct. And so the major feedback we've had is that some boards were very concerned that they don't want to give up their policy-making decision.
Right.
And this is not about that. This bylaw, from at least from the select board
Right.
to this point, and I think what our intention is it's a managerial type of bylaw, because we think as a board that our town would function better by giving the town
We
administrator
understand
some
that, but-
direction.
But they're going to come
Some
back.
people in the
and-
public may not yet, so that's why I want to keep, describing, this is managerial. This is about having one person who has, if the employees are not showing up on time, and right now, if you're on a particular elected board, you are supposed to report to the chair of that board,
Yeah.
and the chair of the board has a daytime job and is not monitoring
So
what is
let's play
going
out
on with
that
the
scenario.
employees.
So employee A is been appointed by a board to enact certain to enact their policies, because usually those employees also don't make policy, right? And
They shouldn't.
right, so let's say that employee is not in a policy-making role, but is
Implementing.
implementing, thank you, the policies that his or her board, not her board, but the
Their
board to which they're applied, is supposed to enact. And starts not showing up on time. And the administrator we've designated to monitor that has a series of disciplinary actions to get that employee to comport with agreed-on standards, and that employee does not. And now the administrator says, I have the authority to hire and fire, and the multi-member board that we talk about, they're not going to complain that that person's not. In fact, they're going to say, they're doing my policy actions. What do you care that they show up at 10? That's the real problem they have. This is a clarification that is helpful, but it is not going to eliminate their concern. Their concern is the hiring and firing. How do you adjudicate that responsibility with their authority to have that person implement their policy?
That's just a difference, I think. I don't think that's a gap we can bridge, because I think what this is saying is, no, in that case, that's not at your discretion. If they're not doing the job or following the policies and procedures of town hall or the town, then.
Okay.
One of these
That's the
things.
whole point of this.
Right. The point of this, too, is that as we're looking out, and as a board, we've been really studying the budget. We've been trying to think of ways to make our town run better and how to attract great employees to our town. And that's one of our biggest challenges is employee attraction and retention. And to do that, having a strong or a better managerial structure where you have clear policies that are adhered to and have someone who can oversee those, it makes a lot of sense. You're running a $35 million business here, is
Yep.
essentially what we're doing.
Right.
And right now, we've got this hodgepodge of nobody's keeping track of anything, of who's reporting to whom and
I
what
don't
they're
disagree with the
showing up.
problem.
And so if we don't do this, and what this will allow the town to do is to be able to say, and that really as the select board, but through the town administrator, we can start to say, wow, we're going to get all your policy goals accomplished, and we're going to make sure that we have the resources, because we can start sharing or cross-sharing resources where they're needed, and that's going to help the town in general. So, it's time. It's time that we move this direction.
And Ryan can speak to it more, but these different departments are interconnected. It's for the public. They're not coming in. They're coming into town hall. A lot of the processes and regulations and permits require cross-functional approvals and cooperation, and so it makes sense from a service standpoint to look at it that way.
Right.
And it also matters a lot for just kind of the culture in town hall, right? In the sense that if you're working here, everybody's following the same set of, personnel policies, and people are, all evaluated, and they're all setting goals, and everybody's being held accountable, and, it just makes for a much more positive, cooperative team, I think.
And whenever I talk to anyone that's not directly involved in town government, and I try to explain this, the response is, well, isn't that how it works now?
Yeah.
And then you try to explain how it works, and people look at you like, why is it set up that way? So I think there's a common sense element to this, and I think from a public perception in general, unless, again, for people that are just interacting with the town occasionally or for certain things, they view it as a coordinated, managed service. And so I think for most people not involved in town, this is actually how they think it works, how we propose it.
Right. I think one other item that I think we should discuss, because it's going to come up as questions, and I want to make sure, this is not my bylaw, this is the Select Board's bylaw. And we have excluded the school, we have excluded the fire chief, and we've done so for a
And the fire
specific reason.
department.
And the fire department,
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
And then as individuals, we've excluded the fire chief, the police chief, the town clerk, and
Town council, and then the finance, our.
right, the new
What
one
do we
is
call it?
the tax collector.
And there's
the-
a,
yeah,
treasurer, tax collector.
Right.
and there's a clear rationale for each. We don't need to go through them all tonight, but we should write them up, or
We'll do that, but I want to.
Yeah.
we could go through them. I mean, I think the
But
school is clear. You have a school committee that's elected by the town to run the school. It's kind of,
Well, but you could say that.
Do say that
Should say
about
that
the
about a lot of
conscom,
things. I
or not
wouldn't-
conscom, we're
Okay.
not elected, but the planning board,
Yeah.
or any of
Board of
these.
Health or the library, right, they're independently
But
elected.
isn't there some statutorial element in terms of state law that
I think
is
that
why
for the
we
school,
can't-
there's a
Yeah.
statutory
Yeah,
element
that's
that
what I'm
we
talking about
really
with the
cannot
school.
approach,
nor
reach.
would
Right.
you, it's a,
And with a strong fire chief, you can't, we cannot,
Strong- Well, I think,
or we don't have oversight.
yeah, right. I don't think we should, these are tricky legal matters that we should not weigh in on.
Okay, I will follow up and
But I
get,
want to say, and I thought we read it here, there is another piece of the naysayers, if you will, that would say this is a land grab by the select board. It's not that they're teeing up on the TA, they're like, he works for you, and you're grabbing more authority. I thought we were going to say and clarify that, we're saying here clearly, the TA does not have policy-making responsibility, but we didn't really super clearly say, the select board is not like adding new authority to its mandate. Like the policy-making authority of those multiple member bodies that have such remains, like, it didn't come out clearly in this
It is
draft.
strictly an HR.
No, I know.
no, you need a statement like for the sake of clarity.
Yeah,
like
because it
this
says the
bylaw
TA
does
shall,
not-
it's
right.
not a policy-creating position, shall not have the authority to create and set policy independent of select board approval or authorization, comma, nor may they, which
Right.
I would say he, may do so on behalf of other towns. But it doesn't tie the third way, which is say, nor shall the select board
Right.
have any policy-making authority that it doesn't
Or-
already have, like something like
Or just something that said this bylaw does not
add or
add or change the
policy.
policy
right. I
authority.
think that clarity needs to be made because that is a comment that we
That
heard.
might just be that's probably, the lawyer would say you don't need that, but this is more of a
That's fine. It's
visibility.
Or to be a
Yeah.
statement out there.
we got to massage this, and this is
So that's my comment.
this is,
Okay.
these are the comments we received, we're
Right.
trying to incorporate.
And I
them.
understand.
We want something that is going to be well-received at town meeting.
But I know that, in talking with the school committee, it does, when you do have exceptions, as we do, it does raise the question of why this and not this. And so I think with the library, for example, the latest example, it is hard, like, I don't know what the correct response to that question of, well, why this, and but we need to be in there. We need to have a better response to that pushback of why why we do have some exclusions.
We have a minute or two. Do you want me to ask people online?
Sure.
I mean, we're always looking for feedback, so this is the time. So Scott, I see you nodding. I think that's
Scott's excited.
great.
I'm speaking now on behalf of the Recreation Commission, who discussed this in their most recent meeting. And the question they just wanted some clarification around They understand the need to have the town administrator or the desire to manage all the town employees and the efficiency that brings and whatnot, and the consistency. The question was around unilaterally terminating employees, meaning or a suggestion is, could the select board retain dismissal, review, let's say, rather than just having the town administrator hire and fire at will kind of thing. That was the one concern they had, which is they understood the managing aspect and the, aligned under one umbrella aspect. It was more if we had a rogue town administrator, present company excluded, let's say, that, fired maybe in a way that was not appropriate, for example, and having that extra catch level of safety, let's say, of the select board, authorizing that, provided comfort to those members. So
Yeah,
I just want to provide that
it's
feedback.
actually built in. It's actually built in because the select board hire and fires the town administrator. So if there were boards, let's say, the RecCom were unhappy with that, they would come to us, to the select board, and then the select board would either reinstate the employee or fire the TA, or, it's not unilateral.
And the other
Sure,
thing
yeah,
I'd say
I
is.
understand there's a way to sort of recover from that over time, for sure. But I just want to provide the feedback.
Yeah, the other, just one follow-up, Scott, is that
We did discuss
our
this.
human resources policies have a very clearly spelled out process. If someone who's supervising you, or in this case, the TA, is concerned about your performance, there's a very thorough and lengthy process that has to be followed. And if that weren't followed, then that would absolutely be grounds for, the select board stepping in. But it means that employee has a lot of protection. And that's specifically what the human resources personnel director, which is not the town administrator, it's our assistant town administrator. I mean, that's their role.
Right, and we didn't explicitly say it in here that they will consult the select board, but we did say that the town administrator shall consult with such official or multiple member body prior to making an appointment or removal under this section. So to the extent that, using your committee, if, the head of RecCom or whatever, if wasn't working, the administrator, the town administrator will come to you and talk to you about it ahead of time. That doesn't preclude you, the town administrator, from actually taking action. But if you were to hear that, the thought is that you would immediately call up the select board and say, hey, we think something funny is going on, or this doesn't make sense, and explain it. And then we would take it up. And frankly, if there's a problem, the select board will have to deal with it, address it. So that's kind of the rationale we took on this. But thank you for the feedback, and we're trying to, the more questions we get, or comments, the better.
That's sort of subtextual. I mean, I think Scott's point and some of the other criticisms, would you consider that in those cases where the employee works at the direction of one of these multi-member bodies, would you consider that we, as a select board, would have to review any disciplinary actions or, certainly termination? In other words, yes, you gotta wear a tie on Tuesdays, yes, you have to come in at 9 o'clock, all this jazz. But, chronic problems, like, we gotta elevate it. It's too subtle, like, well, yeah, Aubrey has these procedures. That's not gonna be their beef, right? I mean, at least we would say, we're gonna serve as a firewall, like, we're gonna make sure that there's not some rogue TA. That's their concern, right?
Well, right now, I think, maybe we can ask the TA, but the policy is that don't we have the authority right now? The TA doesn't have the
I
authority.
know, but it's all subtle, it's not explicit in your.
I mean, what can you, your authorities are not laid out right now.
So you've delegated your human resources authority to me, except for the positions that you've discussed. So I have your full authority to do these things.
Right. And in good faith, I will just say publicly, but on any major thing, the TA has come to us as a board in some
Yes.
some
I know, but it's-
fashion and talked to.
So there's some municipal things that you should consider here. So if the select board is gonna take up an HR action, or any public body is gonna take up an HR, you would wanna do it in executive session. If you do it in executive session, you have to invite the person into that conversation and then produce the minutes. The problem with human resources is they're not meant to be public, but municipal government forces it to be. So a lot of the issues come up because the boards don't know how to handle something like a discipline action because you have to do it publicly.
Yeah.
So the employee could say, based off of the open meeting law, I want this hearing to be public. And now you have a giant problem when someone just wasn't wearing the right tie, to use David's analogy. Not that you would discipline
It's a real
someone.
thing. It's a real thing.
Well, that's
But-
helpful,
But
and that's,
I mean, sure, so it's better if it's handled by people who routinely know how to handle such
Right.
matters. But that's not really what I'm saying. I'm saying, and it may be in the subtext of our procedures, but we're preparing a change. I think we should be explicit at the point of being overly explicit. And I think, again, one of the, I raised 2 points. One is land grab by select board, so we'll address that. The other one is rogue TA down the line, and why not have, in certain cases, where, again, that employee takes
Direction.
his or her primary direction from a policy direction, however you want to phrase it, from a multi-member body, that, and maybe you restrict it to termination or dismissal.
Removal, yeah.
That elevates to exactly, executive session, representation, council, like it's a bigger deal. We know how to handle it, we're the pros, but it still needs to happen. And it needs to happen with some oversight. If they're gonna relinquish their board oversight of that, I don't think they wanna relinquish it to one of our minions. Pardon me.
Well,
They
no,
want
but
us, like,
that's what
open-
keeps it private.
that's right.
But I don't know about private being important at that point. Termination, I don't think so. They don't care. If they're gonna lose their job, I don't think public-private is an issue.
The
I
real,
think process is the issue.
the real problem to consider in this scenario, this is my opinion now, but on behalf of employees, is when one employee accuses another employee of something, that employee who was wronged, hypothetically, has to go to a public body and board to make that.
No, we're past that. We agree that that shouldn't be that way.
But most firings happen because of that conflict. It's
But-
not a
right.
conflict.
But Ryan, if
People don't
employee
get
A and
fired
employee
for
B
not
have a
wearing the right
fight,
tie.
if employee A and employee B have a fight, and you're in the middle because you're now the administrator, and you sit them down and you do whatever it is you would do with people who are not part of those boards, you keep doing that.
Mhm.
But if it doesn't adjudicate, and you get to the point where termination is the remedy, I think it's kind of above, they're gonna say, that's above your pay grade. Now, they are probably not super comfortable with relinquishing it at their board level to us, but the fact is, we are a board and we do that sort of thing. And maybe that's a remedy you would consider in this law, just to assuage people that it's not just gonna be, we're handing this off to the administrator. The hot button issue is, you're firing my guy. And I have no control, because you're firing my guy. Yeah, you're gonna get me somebody else, great, but I didn't have anything to say.
Well,
They say, well, we're here, we're gonna be fair, we're gonna do this and that. We're also elected, we have a responsibility to the citizenry.
But in the bylaw, they do have a say, because this is done in
They
consultation.
do not have a
with them.
say. Read the thing, it says consideration or
Consultation.
counsel. They
Consult.
ran over that with track shoes in 2 nanoseconds on both the boards we talked to, that I talked to. Right, that's not the same. I'm saying put a mechanism. The thing that most sticks in their craw is you're gonna fire my guy. And yeah, you told me, and yeah, you told me the reasons why. And I protested, and you said, sorry, and then he's gone. And now you're gonna get me a new one, and I gotta start over. And I had no say. So we want it to be out of their hands. We agree with that, for all the reasons that Travis said. But I think we should consider us, as an elected body, as a firewall for the final determination if it gets to
Yeah, I
At
that.
what
guess
level?
that's what I'm
At-
asking.
Termination.
No, I
Which
get to
staff
tell you,
level?
which staff level, because
The staffs that you, it's a wordsmithing for the council, but the staffs that receive their policy direction, there's some
Direct
wording in there.
reports to the-
Well, reports to, no, because they're not gonna report to, but their policy direction from, I'm not sure the verbs, but their direction from the multi-member body. That's not many people.
But isn't that all of the people in the chain? So
It is
if
absolutely
you're-
not all the people. It's not Jim Hall. Is it Julie? Yes, it's Julie. But it's not Jim Hall, and it's not Gretchen. You know, it's only a few people.
Well, but Council on Aging and Human Services has they've got a board, they've got, a director, they've got 4 people or 3 people. I mean, do you have to include, I'm saying, I
Maybe
would
it's
say,
the
I would
independent
elevate
elected.
it, I would just elevate it to the senior most person of
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
those.
no, yes, the senior, yes, that's what I mean. Right, yes, I agree with that.
We're not dipping down. The whole point of this is
The
to-
senior most person,
The
yes,
senior, yes,
yes,
I think we're all in agreement on that,
right. The one person, right.
talking about the senior people.
So, anyway, it's a consideration.
Procedurally, though, if you have a situation like you described, when then it moves to termination to a conflict, now you have doesn't that create problems? If you have an executive session where you have to invite the people, you have to make the minutes available, and it involves sensitive,
Yeah.
doesn't that become untenable at some level?
Yes.
So what do we do?
How does it become untenable?
Well, it's all that information is public. If you
it's
have a harassment case,
I mean, if it's leading to termination, if you were being terminated, what would you want for remedy?
well, if someone's accusing someone of harassment of some kind, I don't think either party would want all the details of that information
If you're
put
gonna
into a
take
public record.
disciplinary action, and you're the person whose job is at risk, what do you want for protection? We've had hearings with union personnel, right? Are those public or? No, it's executive, right? But it's eventually.
Actually, the
With the
the
police
employee
Police
can
officers.
request to have it done in public.
Right.
Right, so
They
they
can
can.
waive the
right, people have that
executive.
right. I mean, I think people have that right. There's risks to it, but it's.
I would just ask that you consider the other side of that. So we've had employees in this town who have experienced a policy violation, and we've brought that violation to a duly elected member board, and they did nothing. So that employee now
They
in
did
town.
not what?
They did nothing.
Did
So
nothing.
the town employee is left thinking to themselves, well, then this town doesn't care about my work environment.
Doing nothing, how is it brought to their attention? In executive or public meeting?
By me.
In executive or public meeting?
If the chair is willing to share it with their other board members, then it might have a full and fair hearing. But if the chair is not, I don't have the authority to tell the chair to.
I know, but but the chair is an elected official by the town who carries a higher level of responsibility.
And should be sharing it with the rest of his
And
board.
should be, but a rogue chairman, okay, I can't,
Well,
okay.
that's-
I mean,
It
you
may
could have a
happen.
rogue chairman,
It
but.
may happen.
But so may it the other way, where it gets buried and we never even know about it. I don't know, I mean, I believe when we go into executive on a personnel matter, then the people have the right to be represented at that executive?
Yes.
And the public disclosure of that is governed by some period of time, or
Yeah,
what?
isn't it once the matter is settled, then the select board has to agree to release
Right,
those
okay, but that's
executive
way down the
session
road.
minutes.
So from an immediate process standpoint,
It's not released,
right,
that's
it's not
not made
released, so it's
public.
not public, it's simply a hearing at which they have the right to be present. And there's now a third party, like an ombudsman effectively.
But let me put it to you this way. If there is a complaint, and it is communicated to the chairman of that board,
Right.
if they don't act on it, there isn't a hearing.
I understand.
And we need a mechanism to enforce that there is a hearing.
Well, you
And
could
we
say
don't
they have to have it, you could write it in that they have to have a hearing. If they
That is-
request
This
it,
is
they
what
have to have a
we
hearing.
would-
I
That
don't
is the personnel policy. You
But they have to have a hearing if they request it.
But we can't, but because it's
It can't
another
be implemented,
board, we
right.
We
can't
can't-
do anything about it.
I'm not
That's why it
saying
has to
it's
be
their
done
boards, we're
at-
beyond that.
He's
It's
talking
now
about-
at the select board.
No, it's not. I mean,
No, no,
No,
you're
he's
not
proposing it
following.
is. My
saying-
concern is if, by involving the select board, it now has to go into executive session or public hearing, does that create additional HR issues, or does that creates extra complexity versus not requiring that? You don't it doesn't have to go into the public process.
Well,
And so does that public process through executive session or a public meeting as an agenda item for termination, does that create HR problems potentially?
well, I will also point out that we delegated all of our HR functions to our TA because this is not something we really want to be doing. And so why would we be taking somebody else's HR
Only,
things on?
only because we are taking over certain personnel who heretofore did not even touch the Aubrey Thomas system in some ways. So,
Right.
Yeah,
It's a
well,
change,
but they
and we're
were
trying to-
supposed to be governed by our HR policy, and if they're refusing to be, and their boards don't do it, we need to have a mechanism to see that it gets done. And this is what this is trying to do.
And some boards are on board. The Conservation
Yeah.
Commission was in favor of this and voted in favor of it. The Planning Board has appreciated its staffing support, or HR support that it's gotten. So it's not as though, and there are other boards, the MFC doesn't have, I guess it's an elected board, but.
And I feel like we did have this specific discussion earlier in the process about what happens with a TA goes rogue, well, then we step in and
Yeah,
fire the TA
that's-
and then reinstate,
That is the-
reinstate. There is,
Safe, exactly.
there is a fail-safe, it's kind of maybe, but we did have this discussion. We did have this specific discussion.
exactly.
Earlier in the process, and we netted out where we netted out.
Well, and some of it too, David, is that we're trying to not get down into
Yeah,
the
okay.
personnel.
I
We're just
offered-
trying to
I
say,
offered it as a
get
suggestion.
the,
I offer it as a suggestion,
No,
and that's all I'll say.
okay. Well, as a suggestion, I do need the board here to be, if we can be unified, great, but I need to have some direction. I did get the direction that I
I
can go
think
back.
the first, I support the idea, the first clarification.
Of not adding authority or role-making to the
And I
select
kind
board.
of lean on what I thought we had discussed and decided earlier of, there are checks and balances in place. We need to do a better job communicating what those are to people, so we have a response.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
But we don't want to,
Okay.
And we need to make it clear to the chairs of these various boards that
What their
we want them
responsibilities
to
are.
and to reach out to a select
Well,
board
I
member
mean,
if
I
there's
guess
a
that's a
problem,
process
right?
question.
Yes.
Ryan, if you're in a position where a disciplinary action is needed, and it is one of those kind of employees, would you generally involve the board or the chair of the board to whom that person generally takes direction?
So it gets tricky. So the board, and I'm sorry to give you a convoluted answer, but the board only has authority as a board. So if the board hasn't voted to give authority to one single person like a chair, then it's hard for me because I have to go to try to get the whole board to act, but they all want to act through their chair. So if the
Ryan,
chair.
You can only do so in public meeting then, right?
Correct.
Or would you
Right.
request that they have an executive session to discuss it?
Yes. In instances where there's been disagreement over employees and I've requested any action, I've been told no.
No, we're not gonna take it up, or no, you can't do it, or what?
Or that it's not true, or that,
Okay, but let's say you now have the authority that we have given you,
the town has given you.
the town has given you to
Yes.
Uh,
Thank you.
to take disciplinary action on that individual. That board involved can no longer say, don't do it, they've lost that roadblocking effort. However, as a matter of practice, how would you engage that board? Because it is related in some way to the things they need to get done.
yeah, no town administrator wouldn't have a conversation with a board who works closely with it, and that happens now. So I do have the authority to discipline someone like Holly on
Right.
the recreation, but I would never not talk to the recreation department.
How would you talk to them in public? What would be the mechanism by which?
So I would have an agreement with each board to delegate that initial conversation to a chair, and then that chair and I would work out how.
So we
how the
would need
policy
to do
go.
that.
Yeah.
It's not to be written in the bylaw, but that's,
It's a policy that
Okay.
comes
Yeah.
later.
Right.
And this is,
I know, but people ask questions, you want to have answers. So
Yeah.
I think you need to think that through and maybe
So the consultation with
in
would
the
be the form.
FAQs.
We need a
So
manual.
the answer to the question of what does consultation with mean?
Yeah,
It means that the town administrator would contact the chairman,
yeah,
ask the chairman to get approval from his board to, or their board, to give them the authority
Right,
to
yeah.
discuss this with
Right.
Ryan, and/or if they don't want to give them the authority, to have Ryan discuss it with them, either in
in open
executive
meeting
or in
or an
open.
executive session.
So the planning board is a great example. So I went to the planning board and said, how would you like me to help you manage your employee? And the main things are signing payroll, approving town time off requests, and doing annual evaluations. So for annual evaluation, I reach out individually to all planning board members, gather their input, incorporate that into the review. For any deviation from what we've talked about in terms of employee oversight and time, I give them a heads up and say, hey,
Who's them, though?
the board chair.
Individually, collectively, or?
So the planning board likes to go through their board chair, but that was discussed.
So one way is through the board chair.
Yep.
One way is in an open meeting to sit, to be on the agenda, to ask whatever question you need to ask.
So usually you do it in happy times, when the employee is really well performing and everyone wants to talk about the employee. Then you say, how would the employee be managed?
Okay, so I guess so let's button it up, but, in my pitch that Travis has heard and Ryan's heard, marketing materials for this, pro and con, same like Julie, right? What's a yes get you? What's reasons for no? Like, that needs to be clear. And then I think based on this, I would have an FAQ little section, like, these other things, like, how would that work? Like, we've thought it through.
Yeah, questions that we've been asked, let's
Right.
answer them.
Yeah, yeah.
okay, well, we've gone a lot longer, but I think this is important,
This is
because
important.
this is the only time
Very
we have to
important.
talk about it,
Yeah,
and we have to
yeah.
do it
Okay, very good.
as a body. So we are going to move on into the TA report.
Oh, God, I need a minute.
Oh, okay, well, we could do,
vocal warm-ups.
we could do warrants and minutes then quickly.
Or we could, okay, I was gonna say we do the town meeting vote, but,
Oh, yeah.
but
let's
yeah,
do
we
that.
could do
gotta that.
minutes,
Town
if you
meeting?
want to.
When is the town
The
meeting?
vote about
What
the
do you wanna
fall
Oh.
town meeting.
So what did we
Yeah.
decide? There's only 2 days of
November
vacation.
We heard from one of the members, or the town committee, town study
Yeah.
committee, who said November 2nd is the only,
Well, no, there
First
were.
Sunday, right?
There were two, we've agreed that a Sunday, we'd like to continue Sunday to see, because give it more time. I would just, from the beginning of the clock, and thank you, Brian, for helping me with this, the voice of the school parents. October 26th or something is on the heels of parent-teacher conferences, where a lot of parents use the opportunity to take a long weekend, so they might not be around on that Sunday.
Yeah.
So that's not good. The Savoyard is going to be there all of November. My understanding is they're actually going to be setting up right at the beginning of November, so the 2nd creates some issue, but they're not, like, rehearsing yet, is my understanding. The next one, the 9th, 2nd, 9th, right? The 9th is the Sunday before Veterans Day, which is the Tuesday? Maybe, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, another potential long weekend,
It's
but not
November 11th.
less clear. And then the 16th is absolutely the Savoyard performance. So the 16th is out, 26th is out, and between the 2nd and the 9th, I think we were sort of ambivalent. That's what it is. Now, you had done some other research, right?
So the 2nd works the best for the orchestra, and
Okay.
the school reserved that date. Assuming everyone agrees, then that would become the date.
That would be good for us, right?
yeah.
Okay.
So
there
do
you
we
go.
need a motion on
Yes.
that?
Yeah.
I move to, that the special town meeting to be held in the fall of 2025 shall be on Sunday, November 2nd, 2025. Time TBD.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? None opposed, all right, it's November 2nd.
It's also fallback day so we can have an extra hour.
You're gonna need
Sure,
it.
we're gonna go to 2 o'clock in the morning.
Started at 1 a.m.
That might be the last one, right?
We fall back. So people, if we said we're starting at 1, then people would show up. It's really.
No, they'll figure-
Oh, that's what we're
Let's not go that.
Anyway.
Okay,
Let's get-
Never mind.
let's get Ryan
Okay.
through this thing quickly, if we can.
Okay.
Okay, I'll try. So this is my town administrator report. As you can see from all the clutter around, the first floor furniture install is occurring. I'll have more of this in employee recognition in my next report, but Steve and Al have been dynamite
boy. Yeah.
in helping the staff as well, on the town clerk side and the council on aging side. It's always a rush at the end to move, as anyone who's moved knows, but if you go in those spaces, there's plenty of room for activities right now, and it'll be improved space for both the employees
And I
people
just
visiting.
have to say, I was at the transfer station on Saturday, and I saw a guy loading all those cabinets that Al took to the transfer station onto his truck and took them home. So,
Very sustainable.
That's great.
yeah.
Aubrey and I held our quarterly all chairs meeting on Friday. We were joined by the majority of town committees and boards. We talked about the employee review process and updates to HR, the FY26 budget, where it's at. We'll give them an update after tonight's discussion as well. Preparation for the annual town meeting to include reviewing the warrants. And then we heard reports from all the committees. Great way for all the committees to engage. Love seeing the chairs talking after about ways they can collaborate. The town flag dedication is going to be scheduled for the end of this month. I'll make sure the select board is invited when we install the flag that was paraded in here during the dedication ceremony. It'll be installed at the State House, and Carlisle will join towns that have this honor at the
More-
State House and the Hall of
More
Flags.
than a week in advance, hopefully, because last time it was like only a week, and I had already had plans for that day, so.
End of March. I guarantee you it's
Okay.
going to be a week in advance.
All right.
We talked about HR tonight, including James being appointed as our newest police officer. However, I just want to update the board. We are working on visioning with the COHS to make a strong recommendation for our new director. This is helping us to clarify the job description and the overall vision of the next few years so that the COHS can recommend someone that matches this service level delivery. The select board, I wish we had a town crier to do this, but the select board is officially declaring the vacancies for FY26 volunteer positions across the town spectrum and boards committees open. So your policy requires that this be announced prior to March 14th, check. And also
Hear ye.
that people can seek these opportunities, and we'll make sure they're posted a lot. So anybody looking to volunteer for the town, there are plenty of vacancies, and we do need you.
Yeah, and don't forget the town caucus on March 29th for the elected vacancies. Because
31st.
Sorry, 31st.
Some budget updates from tonight. You heard that the average tax bill will be just around 3.5% with the current draft of the budget, 3.5% increase. To address the deficit, the Finance Committee recommended some revenue adjustments and over $250,000 in department request cuts. We also talked about a COLA, which the Select Board instructed the Finance Committee to bring back a recommendation with a 2.5% COLA, which is about a $23,000 change in that budget. Also, we went through the capital plan, and the Finance Committee will make a final recommendation by the end of this month to include in the town meeting warrant. As you may or may not have heard, the Select Board just announced that the fall town meeting will be on November 2nd, 2025. We have secured the Corey Auditorium. This gives mostly the planning board, but other boards, plenty of time to have public discussion about many of the very popular debates that will happen in the fall. The governor's office, if approved, has sent out a $300 million bond authorization for Chapter 90. This has to go through the legislature, but it's a good sign. Our allotment would be $434,000, which is a 50% increase in state funding and up from our $253,000 allotment. You have to compare it to the fair share, so it's really only an $80,000 net gain. But the state's also talking about including RAP funding, which is winter recovery funds, and that would increase this total even more. So we'll be able to do more town projects. All right, hold on to your tables, but the comprehensive culvert analysis is complete, and it identifies more than $3 million in necessary culvert repairs over the next 10 years.
Put that on the capital plan.
Yep, well, that's going, that's why they did it.
Not all bad news. The final report will prioritize 10 large culverts, and I've asked the consultants to consider two major grant programs that may help design and fund these projects. So we're not just going to directly add them to the capital plan. We're going to make sure there's other funding sources to blunt the blow. But these do have to be done. Some of them are significant culverts that have been identified in our climate change vulnerability planning as significant areas of flooding if we were to have an issue. You heard a lot about elevators tonight. The project is ready for bid and will go out to bid next week. We'll ask all vendors to hold their bids through town meeting, so we'll bring a solid number to town meeting for that debt authorization article. The MFC continues to work through their discussion of the brick building's HVAC. So this is going to require a one-for-one replacement. They had talked about more sustainable options and using the Green Communities funding, but it's just the bang for the buck wasn't there. So they're going to do a one-for-one replacement. This is supported by ESC folks, and we'll be using FY25 money for this, so it will not come onto the capital plan. And lastly, for capital, the town hall bathroom renovation will begin and be complete before June. This is also using FY25 money.
Town hall amenities.
Town hall amenities renovation.
Well, that costs $1 million. If it's amenities.
Fancy word, yeah.
So we had this in 2 years, 40,000 over 2 years. We're going to be able to do it in 1 year because the bid came in favorable, and I don't get to say that very often.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's because you decided not to gold plate the toilets finally.
Yes, that is.
Still room to make the Kate Reed memorial.
Yeah, maybe put it in town hall.
Oh, a donation, yeah.
$10,000, Kate.
Let's go.
We'll put a plaque over it.
All right,
That'll
building.
get you 1 year stall.
Building construction projects. The library renovation building committee had a kickoff meeting with the designer and the OPM to start this process. The committee anticipates construction could begin around this time next year. The police station renovation bid results are coming in. You'll have these for your next meeting. We're hoping for good news here. This will outline the construction timeline and potential funding needs. Tecton and CMS for your fire station renovation investigation recently met with fire department staff to discuss programming, and their findings will be coming to the select board for your review in April. And this will identify whether or not you're going to go forward with a design warrant article as discussed tonight. And lastly, the DPW building investigation with the MFC is complete. They finalized their work with Lero Hill. They're ready to meet with the select board. This will also happen in April. Some upcoming discussions for you to consider and potentially ask questions about. The appointment of a permanent community garden manager. Following the unfortunate passing of Jack O'Connor, the Conservation Commission is looking to appoint a successor. The TSAC is coming to talk to you about operations, future capital needs, and a proposed sticker fee increase. We already did the town audit, so check. Aubrey's been gathering necessary updates to our town personnel policies. I believe that Barney, Aubrey, and I are going to meet about it tomorrow, and this will come before the board at some point for you to approve personnel policy changes. I know that's going to be a multiple meeting discussion, so we'll try to time the release of that information so you feel informed. And then the scholarship process for the Caroline E. Hill Scholarship, we do not have a committee currently, so the select board is going to have to consider either appointing a quick subcommittee of you, doing it as a board, or really looking through the town for volunteers.
Yeah.
But Scott stepped
Scott
up.
already
I
stepped up.
volunteered.
Well, he can't do it.
No, that was something else that you were really
that was another
volunteering for.
scholarship?
Oh, okay.
That's more than, this is the
That would-
awarding of the
this is-
scholarship.
Oh,
Yeah, that
oh,
was a different thing.
I withdraw my
I see.
volunteering.
All right, some approval notifications. So we have approved the use of the town common for Route to Sustainability Day. That'll be up on the 26th and down on the 30th, and this will be happening on Earth Day. The use of the town common was approved for the Colonial Fair on March 15th. There should be a lot of firing. People should know that. There's musket fire.
Oh, that kind of.
Not employees.
Not employees, no. Different conversation.
Mr. Muskett's getting fired?
That's also the first time you can pick up a parking pass for the 250th. And if you want more information about that, listen to our podcast about the 250th.
Yeah.
Where, I'm not kidding, Scott Evans takes you from the history of Lexington and Concord all the way through the 44 years in a row that he's marched from Carlisle to the town center during that day.
Awesome.
Rotary sign was approved for the PTO's Alice in Wonderland Junior play, and a Rotary sign for the Scholarship Fund of Concord Carlisle has been approved and will be displayed. So for this week, I would like to express, I just mentioned him, My gratitude for Scott Evans and Rich Sibley, both well-known in Carlisle for their civic involvement, and Rich is is a call firefighter here in town. So Scott serves on the Veterans and Celebrations Committee and is the commander of the Carlisle Minutemen. While it's impressive he has not missed a Patriots Day since 1984, I especially wanted to recognize his dedication to Carlisle's 250th celebration. When I say he's put in hundreds of hours, it's not hyperbole. So nearly single-handedly, Scott has prepared the town for this milestone event, working with his public safety group and ensuring accessibility for the more than 3,000 residents that are expected to participate and 1,800 residents who are going to march through the woods to answer the call on the 250th anniversary of Lexington and Concord.
That's his projection, huh? At 1,800. All
We'll
right.
march and gather and
Yeah.
grow. And
We
me and
walk
my kids are
together.
going to be them, part of that, so.
Yeah.
The select board is too.
I'm gonna walk.
Yeah, we're not walking, right?
No, but that's fine, but you'll
You're
gather
picking
every,
me up
you're
and
gonna
we're
gather
driving
at
to
6
Concord.
a.m.
Yeah.
We have a pass, right? We're
Yeah,
taking.
you're gonna gather at 6 a.m. at the town.
I don't know, we're doing whatever,
Dave said
whatever Frenchie says we're gonna do.
All right.
David said he's bringing coffee for everybody, so.
Oh, good.
Quickly
Good.
about Rich.
Porta potty for everybody. That's not what I'm worried about.
Rich is a dedicated volunteer in town.
Bad at CCHS.
All right, let's
Okay.
let Ryan get
All
through
right,
it.
I know it's getting a little late here.
Waiting.
So Rich has served on
David.
Carlisle scouting organizations for years. He's served on the, as a member of the call department, and his expertise in event planning and parking coordination has been instrumental in making the 250th more accessible to the community. So for more information, visit www.carlisle250.org and listen to our podcast. Also attached to this report is a draft agenda for your review and some upcoming dates.
Quick
For the
thing,
March 11th meeting, though, you says you attached a proposed draft for the March 11th, and since it's March 11th,
Then we're done.
it's March 17th, I
But
guess.
just, and April 21st, Patriots Day is a town holiday, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
So
event's on the
the
19th.
town's going to close half-day on the Friday before, just because of everything in Carlisle being
So
closed
so that
later.
employees can get out of here before the town
Yeah.
closes.
Right, makes
Yeah.
sense. Okay, good.
Before Concord shuts down.
Concord shuts down the roads and
Yes.
we expect traffic to be very similar to the hazardous waste day event that happened. So, traffic's gonna back up through town, just for residents only. It's gonna be pretty significant. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we're wrong and you'll all say you
You
overplanned
mean
and that'd be great.
significant on the Friday? Or are you saying Saturday?
Starting Friday night's commute and through
Friday night's
Saturday
commute,
night.
yeah, yep.
Concord's shutting down 6
Friday.
p.m. on Friday,
Friday.
so a lot of that traffic's gonna be rerouted. It's gonna come through Carlisle, people trying to get north too.
But aren't we closing the
Early Saturday morning.
oh, not till Saturday morning? Ah, okay. So I got you. Okay,
Is that it?
okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Ryan. All right, so we just have some minutes to approve, it looks like.
Yeah.
You have a motion. We saw, you all
It's,
saw Gretchen had amended minutes that were in the revised packet that came
Yeah.
out today.
There wasn't anything,
There was,
little things.
Barney caught
Yeah.
some typos.
I move to approve the minutes of the February 25th, 2025 Select Board meeting as presented
No.
or as amended in the packet we received this afternoon.
Perfect.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Okay. That is it, except for liaison reports, which we're going to skip because it's so late. And we go for our last item, community input.
This gentleman has been with us all day.
Hi.
Dave has been here. He's listening intently, but we have people online. Is there anyone who wants to make a comment? Ask a question? No. Okay.
All right.
Seeing none?
Planning on running?
Thank you all.
All right. I take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right, second?
Second.
All in favor?
So moved.
Aye.
Aye. All
All right,
right.
we're done for the
Yeah,
evening.
just say so
Thank you,
moved.
Sean.